Thank you. Anyone else on the phone? No, thank you, perfect. I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I call this work session of August 7th to order. The time is 4:01 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to silence your electronic devices. I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we gather today is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Trustee Bustamante Adams, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Trustee Cavazos, would you please make the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda and amended agenda with the following changes. Reference materials provided for item 2.01, Superintendent Search. Reference materials provided for item 2.05, Earl B. Lundy Elementary School on the amended agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Guzman?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. Excellent. We're now going to move on to item 2.1, Superintendent Search, presentation and discussion with HYA and Associates, and possible action on the approval of the focus group draft listing, protocol, probes, and meeting norms. Here with us today is Dr. Sean Joseph. And on the phone, we have Nancy Perez, as well as Kawita Adams. As a reminder, the reference material was emailed to you yesterday evening and posted to board docs that same night. In addition, trustees were asked to review this information prior to the meeting. I appreciate colleagues' consideration, as I know that this item was posted late, with short period of time, to turn around. So thank you in advance, and I know HYA has a great presentation for us that's going to walk us through each of these pieces of the material so that we're all caught up. Okay. There are many items to review today, and we want to make sure that we provide clear and concise direction to the search firm and our staff as to next steps. And I'll turn it over now to Dr. Joseph.
Well, good evening. Good evening, members of the board. And I would say thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all this week. I did have an opportunity to speak to 9 out of 11 of you, and I just want to commend you for your passion and your commitment to this process, this community, the work. It's an important decision that you are making, and it's clear you all are focused on getting this right. So tonight, what we want to do is talk to you about our focus groups. We received a voluminous amount of people and feedback, and we want to share with you our proposal for doing it. And I think there's some decisions that you'll need to make in terms of how many focus groups, and we'll walk you through that this evening. But we'll start with just the Clark County School District probes and protocols for the focus groups. So our focus groups will provide an opportunity for the board to gain insight from stakeholders regarding the strengths of your district, the challenges that need to be addressed, and the desired leadership attributes. The information provides more granular detail than the stakeholder survey. So we'll have a stakeholder survey that goes out, but that's high level. We want you to hear the voices of your very large, very diverse community, and we believe the focus groups will give you an opportunity to have more specificity than what you'll get from the survey. So between both, it'll give us a lot of information that can be used for the leadership profile. So together, the survey, the focus group information, and the district data provides valuable information for the development of that leadership profile that I just mentioned for recruitment and board selection of the next superintendent in Clark County School District. So item number 1 is the focus group dates and other significant dates. So just to give you an overview of where we're going, today I'm presenting to you the board's decisions for the focus group. So by the end of today, we'll know how many focus groups we're going to do, and you'll get an opportunity to see the groups that we have listed for you. Then August 12th through the 16th, which is next week, we begin advertising and getting the invitation sent out for people to participate in the focus groups. Then August 12th through the 29th, so for about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have the survey that'll go live. So we'll be able to distribute that survey out to your community. And again, the goal is to get at least, if you get 30% in deep representation, then you know you've got something that's pretty valid. So with lots of people, we'll work and hopefully partner with key constituencies to let them know that it's really important that they complete the survey. So you as a board and as a community could have input and understanding into what you're seeking in your next superintendent. But then from August 19th through September 20th, so for about a month, we'll go into having focus groups. And those focus groups will be a combination of in-person focus groups and virtual focus groups. And again, as a board, you can decide, we'll give you some suggestions on which, some virtual, some in-person. We may have gotten it wrong. You can happily correct us. And your wish is our command. We'll make sure that we do the focus group in the format that you believe is best for your constituency. And then on September 12th, we will come back and we'll present to you simply a draft of the leadership profile. It's a draft because the focus groups would not be completed. And so we want to make sure all groups have had an opportunity to have their voices heard before we finalized that leadership profile. But we want to give you a draft of what we've heard by that point, because we would have had the majority of focus groups completed by that time. But then September 26th, we'll bring to you the final approval of the leadership profile. So 6 days after the focus groups concluded, that's how we'll have time to get everybody's in. So we don't want anybody to panic and say, oh my God, we didn't do it before the 20th. There's no way. No, we'll still have 6 days to make sure that those groups are equally heard and incorporated into the plan. So on the September 26th, you'll get the leadership profile, and then the job will close on September 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Important to note right now, we are in the process. People are applying. People are interested, and people are calling. We're talking to people. We're moving right now, even without the specificity, but we're letting people know, pay attention, watch, because once that leadership profile comes, that's when we're going to actually look at the profile and people's backgrounds, but pay attention now. So I know, just in case someone's saying, well, it closes on the 26th, there's only 4 days left, somebody will apply. How does that work? Just know, people are aware. It's been on the website since, I think, the beginning of this month. So it's out on our website. It's live on our website. People can call, and interest around the nation is a buzz. Just know that as we go through here. So item number 2, scheduling and distribution of invitations. HYA is following a disciplined process to ensure all stakeholders have a voice. Invitations will be sent out from Hazard Young, Atiyah, and Associates, and we have a formal process where we'll go through to make sure that all of the focus groups are consistent, and we're asking everybody the same questions, so that way we can take the data and pull it and know that we've asked the same things and we have the responses, so we can get similar themes as we go through the process. And again, our goal is to be your ambassadors. So we'll have a consistent statement that will be read in each focus group, and it's included in today's agenda. It is reference 2.01B, as you can see. So specifically says, the opening statement would be, thank you for being part of this community engagement session. What I hear from all of you today will be incorporated into the leadership profile, which will guide our work in recruitment and the board's ultimate selection. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Sean Joseph, an associate with Hazard Young and Atia. I'll be taking notes and reporting back to the board and the district. Your comments will not be attributed to you. This is a safe place where we want to hear authentically from stakeholders about the district's strengths, opportunities, and challenges. This is an opportunity for those directly affected by educational policies and strategies to provide insight and voice their concerns and suggestions. Your voice will also help us sell your district to great leaders that are a fit. That being said, this focus group is not the appropriate forum for criticism and/or praise of individual personnel. Please know that any comments made directly about a particular person will not be included in our report. Personnel feedback should be directed to Human Resources or directed to the board. Finally, it's important to note that we bring candidates that best match the profile, but it is the board, not Hazard Young and Associates, that decides who interviews or who will be hired. So we'll make sure everybody is aware of those facts, that it's important. In terms of our deliverables, we will have a summary of the focus groups, and that'll be an appendix to the leadership profile. What's important to note is that we're not summarizing meetings. Every word verbatim will be included in that leadership profile. So we can anticipate it's going to be very big. We'll give you a summary, but it's important that the community know that everything that's said, everything that's shared will be there verbatim. So you'll see the raw data that we'll ultimately analyze to create the leadership profile. So if you say it, it'll be there in that packet in any of the groups. That'll be important for people to know that actually happens.
Can I just make one statement there? The verbatim stuff comes from the survey. The stuff from the leadership, I just want to make sure they're fully clear that from the actual focus groups, there will be paragraph summaries from each focus group so that nobody is identified, right? So that there's no identifying comments to who might have said that.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yep.
That was like the voice of the higher being there. It just came out of nowhere. I was trying to figure out where it came from, so thank you. So comments are not transcribed verbatim to preserve anonymity of participants, and common themes are elevated and included in the draft leadership profile and desired characteristics. Item 5, in terms of probes of the focus group. So this is what we're going to ask the people during the focus groups, and we'll be consistent. The first question will be, what do stakeholders value regarding your schools? What strengths do they desire to retain and build upon? Question 2 will be, what are the issues this district currently faces, and as importantly, will be facing in the next 3 to 5 years? When we recruit, we look for someone who desires an extended tenure in the district, so it's important that your new superintendent has the skills necessary to address both current as well as future issues. Question 3 is, what are the personal and professional characteristics in your community that your community expects a superintendent to possess? And 4, we'll ask, is there anyone that you would like or recommend that we recruit? And we'll ask them to just email it to me directly. This is a disciplined process, and that we ask you refrain from contacting potential candidates. And we've talked about this. It's important. It's really important that board members and people of the community, if you are interested in someone, that you allow the search firm to go out and do your recruiting for you. What happens is if you as a board member or someone go out and say, hey, Sean, Joseph, we think you'd be great for Clark County, you should apply. Sean may take it out and start telling everybody, hey, board member so-and-so reached out to me. They want me to be the superintendent. And that could deter people because word spreads nationally. You wouldn't believe just how fast the rumor mill nationally things go, like wildfire. It's just, and because you are a big, prominent district, the fire will be loud and strong. So when it comes from the search firm, it's just best that we're are able to do that and talk to people, and so you're not connected in any of that potential that could happen. But we asked everybody, and we do follow up. Anybody who we receive a name from, we reach out to say, hey, if you didn't know Clark County is open, here's all the information. They have a website. We can answer any questions that we have. Once the leadership profile comes out, we give them all of that information so they can make an informed decision to apply. And so, that's really important. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kawita Adams, and she's going to walk us through the draft list of focus groups and our recommendations.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board.
And there's one question, Dr. Adams, there's one question before we jump into this part.
Okay, go ahead.
Trustee Johnson, you have a question at this time? Can we wait until the end of the presentation? Yes, no? No, okay, got it. All right, come on in.
I just wanted, the process about the recruitment is actually, in the one detail around your reaching out. When you reach out to candidates, if they've been recommended by either anyone up on the dais or anybody in the community, is that part made known to the candidate?
Nope.
So we just
say, I don't even tell them anybody told me their name. I just say, we're specifically targeting you and want you to be aware that there is a search happening. Are you interested in applying? And let me give you the information. We wouldn't tell them a board member because they would, again, then they'd run with it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for indulging. I appreciate it.
I know you have to, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'll allow us to go back to the presentation, then colleagues, if it's okay, I'll do public comment, and then we'll jump in to curiosities and clarity. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Dr. Adams.
Good evening, and thank you again for this opportunity. I will be starting with the reference document 2.01C. That is the document that we will start with. There are a couple of things to just kind of set the stage, looking at the possible times and the groupings that came forward. The list we received was vast and extensive, and it was honestly just a joy to go through it to see how many stakeholder groups that we could develop. And so based on the list that we received from the board, we have 11 stakeholder groups. And within those groups, there are subgroups. So one of the things to be aware of is that in receiving that very comprehensive list to develop these various categories or these 13 stakeholder groups, while you may not see a specific name or a specific group, they are tucked inside those subgroups and those stakeholder groups. If you feel that something has been missed, we do encourage you to please continue to submit that information so that we can make sure that we capture everyone that you are recommending in the actual subgroups and the stakeholder groups. So within the contract, you have 32 sessions, and that is that first column. And so when you look at the first column, you will see the recommended dates and the recommended number of meetings based on the 32 sessions that are included in the search fee. You will note that with the parent group, there are 2 meetings per region for a total of 6 meetings. With the teacher groups, because that is a larger group, it would be 1 meeting per region, and we would do that geographically so that you could have 3 meetings happening on the same night in 3 different regions, but there would only be 1 meeting per region. The same for support staff and the same for administrators. The other large groups of subgroups within the stakeholder group would be the special interest group and the community organizations. Those groups were very large with the names that were submitted. And so we would recommend at least 4 meetings with the special interest groups, and then 3 meetings with the community organizations. We would work along with staff to determine those meetings so that they are not all held in one location, that we would look at varied locations so that the community would have access to make it to those meetings. The second model that you see is the model that we are recommending. And it does increase your parent groups to 9 meetings, which would be 3 meetings per region on each of those identified dates. So you would have 3 meetings on the 19th, 3 meetings on the 10th, and 3 meetings on September 16th. When you look at the teachers, support staff, and administrators, increasing those meetings from 3 to 6, where you would have 2 meetings per region on each of those dates. The other areas that we are looking, that we would increase would be the elected officials, also looking at higher ed, special interest groups, community organizations, and of course, the education collaborators. So again, I'm going to reference the backup information that gives you a list. If you look at 2.01D, you can see each date, how many meetings would be on that particular date, how many focus groups would be held. And then if you look at 2.01E, you will see the suggested focus groups and then the subgroups aligned there. And then recommendations with regard to in-person or virtual, and then times. You'll note that in the category 1 for the student groups, those times, those possible times are left blank because that will be determined, that is left to be determined because that will be based on the student schedules, and we would need to work with staff in order to determine those. An example of one of the categories, if you look at the category for elected officials, you will not see any names listed there. That is number 4. But we did list them by subgroup category. So that's an example of where some of the names specifically might not be listed, but we did utilize that category. And then we have the backup information with those specific names so that we could then be able to reach out to those specific people. And again, as the board, if you feel that any one or any subgroup was omitted as we move through this process, please make sure that you are submitting that information so that we can include it. I'd like to move to the rationale as to why we are recommending Model 2 versus Model 1. Model 2 provides more opportunities to hear from the community and to get an authentic sense of the characteristics of the superintendent leadership profile, and we can easily hear what is really important. It also provides the community the opportunity to share their diverse opinions and truly hear from each other, to hear some of the common philosophies and thoughts that they may have as a community and as a group. And as a whole, it just offers the opportunity to use multiple locations for meetings and facilitates the ease of access across multiple communities and organizations, especially with the larger categories of focus groups. Dr. Joseph?
Thank you. And just know too, so I've been contacted by community members and so forth. And as that happens, I mean, we love engaging. You have a very engaged community that you already know. You have that. So I'll just reinforce it. And I think it's great that they're reaching out. So as people have reached out, know we've also, if anybody's reached out and asked for specific meeting times or things, we've included it. We've asked them to reach out to Joe Caruso as we were working to coordinate this. So we didn't want the perception that one group had access that others did not have and so forth. So we made sure, just for full transparency, anybody that's reached out, we've asked to email Mr. Caruso, but then we've also put it in your file so you know this group, this entity reached out, here's what they said, here's what I said. Because we know transparency is extremely important, and we want to make sure everybody feel comfortable and know everybody's on equal playing field here as we're working through this process. That's important to us. We know it's important to you. You've communicated it, and we're working to make sure that that actually happens. Oh, we can open it up for, oh, I know you're going to have some
Public
feedback, some public.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Thank you, Dr. Adams and Ms. Perez. Before I turn it over to public comment, I do want to, just want to share and orient my colleagues for a minute because I do have some guidance in preparation for the next steps. We have some decision points to make, and specifically around the number of focus groups. And also to clarify the create distinctions specifically around staff's involvement, and HYA's involvement there in an effort to continue to be incredibly clear. Like, we've hired HYA to be our contractors for this particular role, and everything is going through HYA. Staff, specifically Joe and council have, although council's not our staff, has been involved heavily in this process to support, to ensure that the channels are followed directly through HYA. So thank you for that. I don't mean to be ambiguous, but to be help clarify even further. Dr. Joseph, you mentioned the community group, and I just want to make note that we've received one message, and that's included in your reference material, colleagues. That is the one group that has reached out to us. No other groups that I'm aware of or we're aware of have reached out to us. And in all of those, we redirected them to HYA so that they can collaborate directly with them. So I needed to put that on the record. Now I'm going to move on to public comment. Chris Giuliani, come on up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the trustees. Thought I was here, I might as well make some comments. So just for your edification, I would suggest that you make any of the nonprofits that are on here, make sure they're accredited and registered in Nevada, because there's some that are flybys that claim that they are, and you don't want to risk that part of it. And you just go to the Secretary of State's website. The second thing is, I didn't see Girl Scouts, but I saw Boy Scouts, and I didn't see anything with your SOTs listed. And they really should have a voice in what's going on and what their comments would be. There's issues with Prisoners of Hope, but I don't know if you want to get into that. That's a whole nother thing. There's Walden University is not accredited in Nevada, and it's only an online university, so I don't know that I'd be taking their feedback. You have a typo on page 3. It should be 872. And then I know my name was recommended. You guys not like me? I'm not down on educational collaborators, and I think I have something to offer one way or another, so I would ask that you consider that. Thank you. Oh, finally, on your focus groups, having done surveys in the years past, I would suggest with your members, your employees, you do a simple card that's identified as yours only and give them that opportunity for feedback, because people run around in this town with extra jobs and whatnot, and you're not always going to get them to show up at a focus group. I don't know how you manage yours. Are they like, I don't know, there's a company here in town that has been used for years for doing focus groups for both product as well as campaigns. It's called Fiero Communications. They do that and host that for you. So if you don't have that expertise, there are just maybe some people to look at in that part. I would say make sure it's very confidential. Things are in all languages, or at least Tagalog, Spanish, whatever else we need to have. I know we do it for the election purposes. And I did not see education support employees on the list, but maybe they were there and I didn't go through it as quickly as I should have. And I do think verbatim, even on the focus groups, would be very helpful for people to see. I don't think it would single out people. I think they'll be pretty honest. But I do think you should do an augmented postcardish kind thing that is identified, that people can write their comments in. And then on your parent meetings, or at least your evening meetings, I would look at, we're a 24-hour town. Maybe you do one morning and when you do one evening, so that you're accommodating folks that are on different schedules. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment. Okay. All right, colleagues, I'm going to provide some additional context and guidance, and then we'll jump into questions to HYA. Okay. In regards to the focus group model presented, I just want to underline that option 1 is included in the search firm agreement. Any additional options, so the recommended model, focus group model 3, and focus group model 4 have price points attached to them, and you'll see them listed at the bottom. Thank you, HYA, for laying that out for us. Other things to consider when we are looking at budgets is that, especially when it comes to these particular models, utilizing school sites is the recommended option as a district owns these buildings. It would not incur facility rental fees. We may, however, incur any overtime fees or energy use fees, right? Power, water, et cetera. And when these meetings occur, including evenings and specifically weekends. Overtime fees for staff to open buildings. There are specific protocols around that that are required. And then I also realized that school starts on Monday, and our staff may need additional time to secure school sites. So I just ask for, while that, I know we have a grace period starting on August 12th that this information will be released in school sites. I ask for a little bit of grace so that we give the administrators who are opening buildings an opportunity to tell us yay or nay whether they will be able to have them, whether they'll be able to have a focus group on their site if we end up using schools. And then I asked the board thank you in advance for the flexibility as our staff is working diligently to secure school sites for meetings. And I have one more note for you all to share, but it's paper. Let's see. And then, okay, I think that's it for now. There's a couple of other pieces, but I believe I will use this I have a feeling my colleagues will bring some of these pieces up. Colleagues, I'm going to turn it over to you. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. First, I noticed that some of the groups that I recommended and the people I recommended are not on this list, which includes the ESP of the Year, who actually works in this district, and she was runner-up for National ESP of the Year. So that's something that we need to look at. The next thing, I have some questions on the focus groups. Is the reason, first I have region 1, 2, 3, and XXX. What does that mean exactly? Is there another region I'm unaware of?
Ms. Adams, if you're there.
Madam, it just takes a minute to clear the microphone. Madam President, Trustee Guzman, those X's were in case there were any other departments that may want to be included. Because as you know, the regions get pretty large, and that's why it's under that first area, because they may need separate rooms or something like that. That's what that was for.
And just clarifying, the reason that you recommend the focus group model 2 is to get a more clear understanding of our community because we have so many schools and our community is so large. I'm just trying to understand the recommendation.
Yes, the recommendation would be so that if the meetings were in person or even virtual, that you could reduce some of the numbers so that they wouldn't be so large and that they could be more productive.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just have one more question. When you're putting together the focus groups and you're working with CCSD staff, are they required to attend those meetings, or are they just coordinating with you?
The virtual meetings were fine without anyone.
Okay.
In-person meetings, we asked someone may be there because there might be an issue with opening a door or getting
Okay.
something done, and they would be in better position to handle helping those technical issues than if we were there alone.
Thank you. That's really important because we need to understand the cost, because this is your cost, and then there's also an additional cost for the staff. So thank you very much.
And Trustee Guzman, if I could address the ESP of the Year, we did receive that name and it has been added to the list.
We simply didn't call out any specific teachers' names or support staff names they were in that category, but we did receive the names, and we will ensure that they know about the focus groups. We just didn't name any single person by name in these documents.
Oh, okay.
We did under the education collaborators, we
Right.
did. And we did receive those names, but we do have those names, and we do have them on the list to contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Dr. Adams, can you please, and Nancy and Dr. Joseph, can you please clarify the role that unions will play in participating in focus groups?
So they will be, it's really up to the board and how you want to handle that. But when you look at the meetings with the focus groups with the teachers, the unions could assist with facilitating that. If you felt that that needed to be pulled out, then we could absolutely do that. But that would be, as far as we're concerned, that would be according to your direction.
Thank you. So at this time, for example, the administrators union, individuals who are in the administrator role would be invited to the administrators focus group. Currently for Model 1 is August 27th, for example. And there would be
Yeah.
three, one per region.
Yes.
So, right, the individual employees who belong to this category will be invited to these specific stakeholder groups. Got it, okay. And then the other piece I had for us has escaped me. All right, we're gonna keep it going. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a few questions for the focus group dates page, which is page 3 of 9. For the advertising / invitations to focus groups, how will the advertising go, or the invitations, how will they be sent out? And are these RSVP events for the in-person and the online ones?
Dr.
So we
Perez,
spoke a little bit about that with the staff here. We would put together that invitations email, and then you have listservs, for example, all the administrators or the teachers or the support staff. So in addition to being on the website for the superintendent search, we would also literally send that email out. You guys would through your listserv. We would create the email, but you would send it out to those already existing listservs, so that everybody in the organization that falls into that group would receive that information and that invitation. And then with regard to the building-based events, like the students working through the principals to know how to best reach the student population.
RSVP? Would it be by RSVP?
No.
I do want to throw out there, I would, no, I lost my train of thought on that one. I'll get back to it. The surveys go live August 12th through the 29th. Is there a way we can extend this timeline, because it is only the first 2 weeks of school? And I am thinking, as someone mentioned earlier, I think it would be a great idea to use maybe like a QR code that we can post, because there's going to be open houses during this time. There's going to be, family nights, like it's going to be, people are going to be in the building. So if we can maybe work with our principals and share that out and have them share those lives, I think it would be, not the lives, I'm sorry, the surveys, I think that would be option to go.
So, yeah, so we can absolutely do a QR code. We've done that before. Great idea. And we can absolutely extend the length of the survey, the timeline. I would suggest, I want to go back to the actual timeline here. We would not want to extend it any further than the draft leadership profile, which is on September the 12th. And so September the 12th is on just looking at that right now, that is a Thursday, so we could extend the survey to like the 9th, so it can go through that weekend. So we have enough feedback to get you that draft leadership profile by the 12th. Or we could give you a draft that does not include the survey at all. I think you should see, the survey results first with the information coming in from the focus groups as a more complete draft. So how about if we extend it to the 9th, which is an extra, that would be an extra, let's see, weekend, week, and a weekend. So an extra, like 13 days.
Would that be something we have to vote on or just consensus?
We should have a discussion on it, and we'll, if there are any changes to this current date structure, we should make a vote. One thing to consider is that if the survey is complete by the 9th, that means we will have, it sounds like Nancy has provided guidance. We should include content from the survey. That's the decision point for the board, actually. Is the survey content, should it be included in the leadership profile? I mean, it
The
seems like
draft,
it's important.
yeah, on the
draft
12th.
leadership profile, yeah. And in order for, just to be mindful of the turnaround time the staff for HYA have to turn this around by the 12th, they'll have like 2 or 3 days. So that's a decision point for the board, for sure. Trustee Zamora, do you have anything else on that?
Yes, I
particular
do.
item? Yeah, please.
I appreciate the September 9th being a whole weekend, another weekend. I think we can be flexible and maybe just extend it by a few more days. It doesn't have to be the full week and the weekend, so that's something to consider for my colleagues. I was also my question is about the times of the meetings. You have it down as 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Are we married to that 1 hour time frame, or is that something that is also flexible?
That's flexible. We were going with what's kind of typical in your culture, and also knowing, activities and night activities and dinner time. And we were trying to think of what's the most opportune time that people would be available, but it certainly is flexible.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up to that. So if we were to say 1 hour, and we do the first couple focus groups, and we're seeing this trend that it's taking, all the time, and maybe adding another 30 minutes would be something that would be beneficial to everyone. Would that be something that has to come back to the board to vote to extend those 30 minutes or add more time to those meetings?
My hope and goal is that the HYA, who's been contracted to give us guidance based off of their experiences, can say, hey, this is what has worked as best practice, and we'll also be able to make judgment assessments, changes as needed, as long as they communicate with the board.
Okay. And I know we were talking about, Madam President, you mentioned about the schools being options to hold the in-person. I was also thinking that's a great time to collaborate with our libraries and our community centers as well, since families are usually already there. I am being focused on my district specifically because I know our community library is very, it's home for a lot of people. They're there all the time. So I think using those avenues is also a good thing to explore. And that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. I remembered my point earlier in terms of Trustee Guzman mentioned the additional staff resources, including who would be out on our team, going out to support HYA during these in-person meetings. It likely will be Joe, and we run a really lean team with Joe's the board office, so just something to be mindful of, colleagues, as you know, that team is extremely light. And Joe, this is not the time to begin duplicating yourself, but I know that. Thank you for that, Joe, in advance for the work you're going to do with your colleagues. Trustee Bustamante, yes.
I was going to say, just Trustee Zamora, just a comment you'd say, as we, the focus groups are, if we have lots of people, then an hour may not be enough time. In other words, we'll make the adjustment on the spot if that's the case, because the goal is to have people's voices heard, not we're not going to have people upset with not feeling like they haven't expressed because we cut it off too soon. But typically, it's been about an hour. You can get through a group, but it just depends on the size of the number of participants comes. But we'll make the adjustment on the spot to make sure people's voices are heard. That's what's most important, both to you and to us.
Thank you. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. My questions are on page 3 of the PowerPoint presentation. So I did have some of the similar questions. One question that I had was, we submitted suggestions to how the survey could be adjusted and be better presented. Is that in another conversation when we'll discuss that?
All of the survey decisions that were made at the prior meeting have been incorporated. That includes the 6 languages in addition to Spanish and English. That includes the extra question about the zip code. That includes the extra question about voluntarily giving their email should they want additional information to be included on your database. And that also includes replacing the word district with CCSD.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity.
Yes.
And I do like the idea of extending the survey. That was one of my questions, and I appreciate that we were considerate of that, so thank you. My other question is on page 4, and it was about the 1 hour. And so when I've been in large groups, there are people that concentrate on speaking first, and the people that are introverts never get heard. And so I'm sure that you guys have strategies, right, that you will use to make sure that I showed up at an evening event for a reason and I felt like I was heard.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And then my other question is on the community focus group model. My question has to do with recommended model number 2. Now at the bottom it says additional cost of $5,400 per contract. Can you explain that
Yes.
a little bit more for me?
Yes, so we included 32 sessions in the contract. After getting the information from the district, all of those spreadsheets that we received at the last meeting, it became clear to us that there was a voluminous amount of groups that the board wanted to be reached. And so we came up with the 4 different models. The contract does anticipate this, and thus in the contract, it states what the additional cost is per each additional session. And so that's already in the contract with CCSD, and simply I multiplied the number of sessions by the contractual amount.
So Ms. Perez, then this is the total amount that it would cost me for the additional sessions going from 32 to 50?
Correct.
Okay, it's not 50, it's not 5,400 per additional?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm good then, I'm getting
No,
there.
we try to keep it nominal. You know, it is a time and materials issue, but we try to keep it nominal. So that is for the total increase to that number, and
Okay.
so on and so forth to the other options.
And then my other question is how, Madam President, I think this last meeting that we had, we approved some additional advertisement dollars to get a good reach. At some point, to be able to have in one summary the additional costs that we are incurring and investing in order to maintain transparency and the outreach, that I think would be helpful. So I don't know where we are on the tab.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. I know that I can phone a friend in a minute to Joe, who would be able to share a little bit more information since he helps us submit a one of those extensions or additional budget modifications. And if we were to add anything else, anything additional to this contract, he would have to submit another document that extend the budget for us for the external cost.
And last time we voted that it would be up to 50,000, right? Additional expenses that we had voted on.
Mr. Caruso, can you please come up to the podium?
Madam President, members of the board, Joe Caruso for the record. So ironically, I just got an update on the request, and the agreed upon amount was $66,410. So you allocated $50,000 for travel and then $16,410, and then allowed me the opportunity to, if I needed to move some travel money to professional services or vice versa. So that I just received today, so that we submitted on, Nicole and I submitted that on the 26th after our board meeting.
And then I think just for my edification, it would be good to see it in one sheet because we have the initial contract, which is I think at 75K. And so we're adding an additional 66,000 and some change. And then, and to me, it's all an investment that I support. I just want to be able to keep track of the cost of the investment that we're making into this process. And so my other question has to do with the focus groups. Dr. Joseph, if a suggestion that we made that you may have, like I just couldn't get a hold of the people. How does that, we made the recommendation, you cannot get a hold of the person for a focus group. Does that communication happen with Mr. Caruso so that we could help maybe track the person down if necessary? I don't want to leave it open-ended and say, you know what, I didn't get a hold of Yvette Williams and so we didn't get their input.
Yeah, no, we can think through that because the information will be sent out, but if we're not RSVPing, we won't know. You know, someone may get an email and say, "Oh, I'll be there," or maybe I won't, but then I don't know until they don't show up at the event if we don't track it. So if you'd like us to think through, more of a system of maybe asking in the email, please confirm receipt or please confirm. I mean, we can do that as a way, but then there's just no, there's no surefire way.
I just can see the community coming back and say, I never saw the email, never. And I'm just trying to prevent that and saying, we exhausted every means to try to reach you and to get you involved in the process. So I don't know what the answer is, and I accept that.
One of the things I may suggest would be definitely, as we put it up on the website, the district website, and the dates will be there for all, and we can maybe expand to say, we can, right now, we have a condensed version for simplicity, but we can list out, one consideration could be list out the different entities we reached out to, place it on the website and say, these are the dates for you, so, and then in addition, send them a direct message. So if they're interested in the search and they go to the website, they'll see, oh, I see my organization, it's here on this day, or they should have gotten a direct email as well. I think this is a situation where you definitely want to over-communicate to let people know that it's out there and that we're actively encouraging you to participate, and these are the venues to do so.
Thank you. And then I appreciated the public comment. If the Girl Scouts weren't listed, if we could include them. Thank you.
We'll make that adjustment.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Bustamante Adams. We're gonna move on to Trustee Cavazos. You're next. Oops. Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. Here we go. Let me add you.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Joseph, good to see you again, and hello to Dr. Perez and Dr. Adams out there in cyberspace there helping us out. I wanted to circle back again to kind of like the beginning, very encouraging, as you said, that we're getting interest in this. Is the application not only on the HYA website, but also on the CCSD website also?
I am not sure about the CCSD website. I am sure about the HYA website, but
I did send just tonight the link to the posting to Mr. Caruso so that it can be placed on the CCSD website so that people then are linked directly to the posting on the HYA site and the application. And so that should be up after tonight's meeting.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I appreciate it. So kind of diving right into the focus groups here, is the Model 2 that's being recommended, and again, I apologize to some of these I should have gotten out of this reference material, but we just got this yesterday, so I'm really trying hard to read over it. Is the Model 2 recommendation, has it been greatly impacted by the 60-page plus list that was turned in? There was some confusion when we were first given the information, like for us to turn in like targeted, like personal contacts, groups that we thought would really want to be, you know, included. And then when we had that 60-page plus thing of, you know, I was looking at some of those, again, been around a long time, looked at some of those, and I think one of our public commenters brought up that some of those might actually not be appropriate to the focus groups we're doing. So was it that document that more or less took us over the top instead of the ones that were turned in by the individual trustees?
You would, I'm sorry, good evening, and Madam President and Trustee Cavazos, the list did impact, though, the number of meetings and focus groups that you would have, but also when you think of the fact that Clark County School District, just within the employees alone, your teachers, support staff, and administrators, you're looking at almost 50,000, if not over 50,000 employees. And so even if you divide them into thirds, to add another meeting to make sure that people have an opportunity, even on a different date, to go and to have their voices heard, that also plays a part in it. You have an extensive parent community where you know that the parents are going to want to be there. To have, you know, 2 meetings per region, to be able to offer a third would also give them more opportunities to be able to participate and make a more productive meeting, because then they wouldn't have to have so many people in one meeting. You could divide that, and a parent could say, well, you know what, I went on the 19th, I don't need to go on the 10th or the 16th, or vice versa. If they have some type of scheduling conflict, they have more opportunities and access to be a part of the process.
Thank you so much, and that helped a lot. I believe that was Dr. Perez, I believe. Is that Dr. Adams? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Kawita Adams.
Kawita Adams. Thank you so much for that clarification. I guess I was just trying to address constituents' concerns that that we weren't going to have a list that maybe, as pointed out by one of our public commenters, and trying to look through it myself, that maybe they might be, as Trustee Bustamante Adams pointed out, that maybe they might not even respond. We don't have RSVPs, but that it was going to be targeting our parents, our educators, and the people who have been actively involved in reaching out to you and reaching out to us. So I thank you for that, Dr. Adams. My other question had to do with, having to do with, and other trustees have brought this up, where will the verbatim comments be accessible to the trustees, not just the summaries? Where will those be accessible?
So again, we don't collect verbatim comments at the focus groups. We do just summarize them. If so we don't like provide like an actual list, like what every single person said. We're summarizing each group as to what are the key themes. It really is, any group can then look up to make sure that they, you know, that they see their voice within that summary. But a list of comments really is voluminous and doesn't really provide a good way for the board to read through the information and really get a feel for the different groups and what they're saying. So we don't transcribe it verbatim. We don't release the verbatim transcripts of the different online focus groups. We really don't think that that's a best practice. We do have them because we do summarize them, but that's not what's part of the leadership profile.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I do understand where you're coming from on that as far as efficiency and being able to kind of dial down to the common interest. So I would want to state that what was brought up by a couple of my colleagues as far as maybe having some way that if they had some additional feedback, that they could have a QR code or a comment card, basically going from, very, very basic to maybe something that would be very accessible to them, like the QR code, and easy to access. So one other question I'm going to prioritize, because I know a lot of other trustees want to speak probably. Within the probes that are being used in the focus groups, will these very general probes, can they be expanded upon within the various focus groups depending on the unique concerns or questions from a particular group? How does HYA usually handle that?
Yes, the answer is yes. The probes start the conversation, but certainly if a topic is brought up, for example, as one of the challenges, and a lot of people want to talk about that one challenge, we stay with that topic. Yes, they are probes. They're not, they're meant to get the conversation going, and not to put people in a box.
Thank you so much. And Madam President, I may have some follow-up questions, but I'm going to go ahead and stop there. So I know we have other people with questions. So thank you so much, everyone, for the clarifications.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Sparsa-Stroff.
Thank you, Madam President. So Trustee Cavazos kind of covered some of mine, but I want to follow up a little bit deeper with individuals that maybe want to participate. So just for public's question, for example, if a support staff member would like to come and provide feedback, according to document reference 2.01C, they could attend a session within their region on August 21st or September 18th. Do they have to RSVP to be able to be allowed to participate?
No.
Okay. That was a question that kind of popped up. So I want to go back to, thank you for that, Dr. Joseph, and the summary verbatim. So I really appreciate it, and I think it's important. We're moving in beyond the 21st century right? So, artificial intelligence is so accessible to everybody. So during our one-on-ones, we had the luxury of having a platform, which I won't name because we're not here to endorse any artificial intelligence applications, utilized that grabbed our verbatim responses and probably provided a summary of what we said so that you could grab the themes.
Correct.
So can there be consideration that we can use that same or different platform during all of the focus groups? Because I just don't want like a summary from ChatGTP. I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way, but I think capturing verbatim in a way that people can always go back and reference it. And it would not necessarily attach to an individual, because oftentimes those applications just say speaker 1, speaker 2, no name is referenced.
So here's the only thing that will caution you with this, and that's why we also do not provide or don't recommend providing just an open-ended on the survey. You will receive the comments. For example, if at every focus group we put up a QR code, which we've done before, some districts say we're fine with that, you will get comments that are inappropriate. And you will need to have your legal team review all those comments when there is a freedom of information request or you are told to post that. And think about it, a comment per every 5-10 seconds over the course of an hour, over the course of 50 focus groups, someone's going to have to redact that if there are things that are brought up that are inappropriate or even other things that then need to be investigated. So that's the only caution that we do give you. There are some districts that have said, we're going to go in that direction anyways. Those are usually very small districts, right? Because they can handle the volume. The volume here will be significant. And so we've done all of these things before, but as I said, someone will have to, and your legal team, we certainly would not do that as we are not lawyers, have to go through that and ask what is appropriate then to be made public and what is not. of those comments.
Thank you for that feedback. And then again, the possibility of it somehow being available in some format could still be considered. I don't know that we'd have a solution right now. Even a summary from an application could also be provided as well.
So we will provide a summary from every focus group, right? Of what the key, points were. We will summarize. But we don't like to collect all of that verbatim information only for the reasons I just stated. Unfortunately, there will be comments that are, like if I put up a QR code at a focus group and I say, feel free to add any comments if you didn't have a chance to speak tonight, we will receive comments that are totally inappropriate. It happens every time. And so then those will have to be reviewed, redacted. Your lawyers will have to determine if it's appropriate to redact it or not. There might be personnel items that are brought up, student names, student information, all of those pieces. In our experience, it always happens.
Thank you.
So
So what would be the
that's-
note I didn't mean to cut you off. What would be the note catcher? What would be the
We
note
are the note
catcher?
catcher. We are. We will write the summary after the end of each focus group. We'll utilize what we've learned and we'll synthesize it into a paragraph.
I know when I do focus groups, as you saw in our meetings, I prefer to use just an AI that just captures and then gives a summary, and then it's just easy to you still have to read it because sometimes there are misspellings and things of that nature, but it's a quick way for me to capture what happened so I can focus on kind of listening to people and going through. But we'll definitely take it back and work on a consistent method to make sure whatever we do, there's consistency.
And remember, after those summaries are done, what Sean just referred to, I was thinking of the larger writing of the summaries. We're trying to synthesize themes from all of these different groups and board and the survey to come up with the profile and desired characteristics, right? So that can't be done by any kind of AI, right? Like, so there may be some AI being utilized within an online focus group, but the real work is trying to then synthesize what we've heard across all these disparate groups into the draft leadership profile. And that's really the really difficult work.
Thank you for that. And that is a huge undertaking. Exactly. The only other thing I wanted just to be as a reminder, because I also was echoing Trustee Bustamante Adams, is the cost. We also have the additional cost for the languages. So it would be helpful to see a visual just because of the nature of the path that we're going, and there's other additional things that we would have to consider. But I do concur that with the larger focus group amounts that we are doing, that having a smaller group would be beneficial to try to, like you said, garner all of the feedback and then grab the themes. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. A couple questions. One is, what's considered a special interest group in this category, and why do they have 4 different meetings?
Dr. Adams?
Yes, Madam President, Trustee Brooks. So when you look at the different special interest groups, and if you look at the list, those are organizations around Las Vegas, for example, that reach out to a targeted audience. And then when you look at your community organizations, those are your larger groups, usually memberships and things like that. And so that was the rationale for that separation. And then it was just another way to be able to condense the list that we received to try and categorize them in a way that that we could manage.
Thank you for the clarification. It just seems like, I appreciate you including the special interest groups, but it seems like the number of meetings for teachers would be higher than special interest groups. I just think I don't think it sends a positive message that we would prioritize special interest over the people who are in classrooms. I'm not sure that I have a solution for that. So I guess my follow-up question is, when you report out the special interest groups, you're going to lump all 4 of those together, and then that's going to be their opinion, or are you going to get like 4 different opinions?
All of the information would come together in a collective report. And I do want to clarify, there was not a prioritization of having more special interest group meetings because they were prioritized over teachers. That was not the case. The number was looking at the organizations or those specific interest groups and the numbers of people that might show up for that. If there is a recommendation from the board that the special interest group would be reduced, then we would take that under consideration and we would absolutely accommodate that. Just making sure, understanding that in the regions, looking at that geographic region, if you have 3 meetings for that region, those are 3 opportunities for those parents to come. And you have roughly, with Model 2, you'll have a total of 9 meetings that could accommodate, because you've already broken down the parents into sections by region. Whereas with special interest groups, that's more citywide than by region. I'm not sure if that's clear or not.
One of the things that we could do, last time we met, we talked about the teachers group, and we thought that those should be in person. We have an option to the in-person dates by region, but we could add virtual sessions. And that way you have a lot more sessions than for teachers. And then they have the option of virtual as well. Last time the board was directing more towards in-person for teachers, but I do think that a lot of teachers still like to be virtual. So we could add virtual options, numerous, for teachers.
Thank you for the clarification. That answers my question. I actually think that the basic model, I appreciate the group's enthusiasm for how excited the community is for this, but I've been here for 8 years, and we do not have a community that is going to show up at each one of these. So by the time you hit meeting 3, you're going to be talking to an empty room. And that's just the unfortunate reality. So I want to be mindful of, I think what you're offering in your actual contract is more than adequate. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to accept that. And I'm open to suggestions on if tweaks are needed, but I think that this will get us there. I think you're doing an online survey. I think that the survey time, I also appreciate wanting to extend that, but I don't want to do that if I have to sacrifice the quality of work that happens after that. If you're going to post QR codes in schools, the time people are going to fill out the surveys are their first 2 weeks. So I just want to be mindful of that, and I want to move forward with a focus group model 1.
You are right about the survey. People take it immediately or they really don't take it. I mean, that we see that in every survey we give. So you are right about that.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. I see you have a motion. Do we have a second at this time? Or Trustee Cavazos, you're on the queue, but are you seconding? No. Okay. We're going to ask, we will go ahead and take your question. Trustee Brooks, are you done at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
great.
thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. We have a motion, and it sounds like there may be some questions, and then potentially I'll come back to request a second. Trustee Cavazos, you're next.
Okay, so I think what we have to remember here is, and I will agree with Trustee Brooks that, again, having been here for about the same amount of time as her, is that we have some basic questions, probes, and commonalities that we're going to be seeking here. And I do think that, again, as to my previous question, that we do want to focus in on the students, the parents, the educators, the community organizations, and not an endless list of not meaning to exclude anyone, but the people who are actually going to show up. And I will kind of temper my comments with saying that sometimes we don't know who's going to show up. That sometimes the people that we think are going to show up are not there, and other times we will have a larger community show up. So I think that I just wanted to make the comment that we don't have an absolute rush to do this if we're not going to, look at every single aspect. I think what our goal here and what HYA is trying to do for us with their expertise is to do this right, not necessarily to be on a very tight deadline. So I appreciate my colleagues that are, talking about, like, I'll use as an example, Trustee Zamora, as far as extending the survey, doing comment cards, whatever. So, anyway, I just wanted to make that point and to agree with Trustee Brooks that, that we do want to have the focus on the people that are most going to be impacted by our search for this new, search and appointment of a new superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Okay, I see Trustee Zamora and then Trustee Satori, and then I'll put myself in the queue.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have two questions. A point was just brought up that people will do a survey in the first 2 weeks that it's out. It sounds like that's because what you all have done in the past is what has happened. Has it lined up with also the first week of school or around something that important before?
No, that this is more unusual that it's lining up with the first couple of weeks of school.
Okay. And then the second question I had was, what are expectations for trustees who would like to participate in, I guess this is for Madam President, for the focus groups?
I'm actually, given that HYAs are experts in this, what have you all done when it comes to engagement of members at these focus groups? Do you all recommend it?
Yeah, there's been a mix. I mean, we've seen instances where, because the community is involved, sometimes trustees like to be there, maybe to welcome them. I've seen that happen and just kind of open it up and then turn it over to the HYA folks to facilitate. That's makes sense. It's a good opportunity because the community's there, and it's sometimes board members like to just hear. They want to be there and just hear what's happening firsthand, and that's okay. I think there's your community and your community expectations. There could be instances where your culture to know whether people will feel comfortable speaking, but if they're there and they're speaking in public anyway, they might as well speak to the people who are ultimately going to make the decision. So makes sense.
Right. So what Sean said about the community is true. Sometimes the teachers, administrators, support staff, your employees feel that they cannot be as forthright with basically, the head of the organization in the room because they know that it won't be attributed to them personally. We're not, they're not on TV. And so they're able to speak more freely. So I would say there is a difference between the employee groups and the community groups.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. And we can come up with a united, if there's an appetite from the board to focus more our energy on supporting, having an interest in attending some community groups, that we create some united, unified, consistent protocol so that we all know and are doing the same thing across all groups. Okay, great, for community groups. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Satori?
And my question was related to the survey window as well. So that was my initial first thought of usually people complete it in the first couple of weeks or very soon after it's released. However, knowing that the focus groups are still taking place at that time, like I thought it would probably be useful to have the survey still open. So that's kind of my question. Do you see that as we're having those focus groups, that we could also then promote the survey, get more people in there? Like you said, a lot of people that may not felt comfortable saying something in the focus group, we could direct them to the survey if there was things that they weren't able to share. So that's where I kind of think maybe that window up a little bit wider would allow more opportunity to contribute. So have you seen that in the past that it does you do get more responses as well once the focus groups are
Yeah.
taking place.
So we always remind people at the focus groups about the survey, and that's why the original calendar had the focus groups and the online survey in the exact same time period, the 12th through the 29th. Then we realized with the number of focus groups and going back to school and needing to get invitations out, we extended that to September 20th. And so now they're off, right? But originally, the original timeline had them coincide exactly together. So I think we can extend it, given, the start of the school year. I do think it would be best for it to end before the first draft of the leadership profile. Otherwise, you're really not getting a real draft.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, because I'd love to see all that compiled together when we see that. And then I would definitely support more of the virtual options as well, because it allows us to open more options up, plus we don't have, cost of the facilities and those sorts of things. So we're able, I think, to offer more of those opportunities without having to manage the facilities. So thank you.
Yes. And then, no, we track the rate of the response rate of the survey, daily. So as we have updates to you, we'll tell you, X amount of people have put it out, and then these are the groups. Because a lot of times it'll give you an opportunity while the survey is going, what are we doing differently here if we're not getting the response rate that we see for students or for parents or for, one aspect of your employee groups, so as we give updates, we can let you know where we see it's tracking well or it's not. We might need to do something differently here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Trustee Zatori. Is that it for now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Sparza-Stroff.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, I have a question for Dr. Kawita Adams. So I was kind of just doing just a straight basic math, right? We would go from 50 to 32, which would be minus 18 groups. Knowing, and that's kind of where I was going with the solution, to think about how can we, Dr. Adams, convert some of those groups. Maybe they become a little bit larger, or maybe they become virtual. So to put you on the spot, I apologize, Dr. Adams, because you did an amazing job.
Not a problem.
So is that a doable thing? Because I don't want the community to have the perception that we're going to eliminate anybody's voice. So is there a way that you can see that be potentially happening?
We could, absolutely. We could do, if that is what the board would like us to do, absolutely, we could offer a couple of those virtually. Because our role, again, is to be your ambassadors, to present you with options when you are looking at how many meetings you might be able to do based on the list that came to us, to see how we could facilitate what the needs were. And so we are more than happy if some of those sessions are virtual versus in person. We could absolutely do that.
Thank you. And having said that, I'd like to second the motion at this time.
Okay, thank you for that, Trustee Sparza-Stroff. All right, colleagues, we have a motion. Let's take a moment here actually to pause. I need a refresher of how we went around this, because there's a couple of other decision points that we've got to make. I'm going to ask Joe to come on up, please, and counsel. Before we take that vote, colleagues, to move forward with the with the focus group model 1. Joe, can you help us out here as we prepare to, what other decision points do we need to make? And colleagues, please remind me, did we take a vote every time we had a decision point? Yes, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Is there anything with respect to the focus groups that you want to share at this time?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Joe Caruso for the record. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the clarity. So devil's in the details. I just need to make sure that I have the marching orders from where we're going. I think it would be helpful if the board could ask the firm to send an email tomorrow to both Paul and myself, so we know exactly which meetings are in person and which meetings are virtual. Because the challenge is, tomorrow's the 8th, we open schools on the 12th. Principals are going to be, and are already living at their buildings now. And being a former principal, looking at a former principal, and, you know, it's a busy weekend. So we will start reaching out immediately to say, can we use your building on such and such a date? My suggestion is we use high schools. I think theaters, if you remember in 2018, Trustee Cavazos, we used Silverado, the gym. The first complaint I heard from everyone was they couldn't hear because of the acoustics. So our smaller sites, elementary, obviously is not going to be conducive with parking. So we'll want to look at the high schools, we'll want to look at the regions. The transformation network overlaps with the regions, but we'll still make sure that there are schools in that area as well. The other piece to keep in mind too is that we want to clarify the staff component. So when we get the dates from the firm, the time frame of 6 to 7 p.m., obviously we'll make sure that, you know, we work with the schools. But we'll need to have the flexibility from the board to say, you know, trying to get this together by the 12th is going to be tight. I will do my best. Nicole will do her best, but we may not get the schedule to the firm for the evening of the 12th, the 13th, and then give them some latitude. Just so, as long as we understand that you are allowing us that grace, we'll do our best to work as much as we can. I heard that obviously microphone will be needed. It doesn't sound like there's any audio-visual presentation, so that'll help. In regards to communication, I heard you say that we will get a message from the firm to send out district-wide using our listservs, admin, support professional, licensed, all administrators, and school police. I do think if I can ask if you are attending the meetings, I would really appreciate it if you let me know, because A, my brain goes to open meeting law, especially with having 4 voting members in the same spot. I don't want to put you in a position where it looks like we're dialoguing about a potential action item forthcoming, so I think it would be helpful. I'm not the attorney, but my colleague and I are usually on the same page. And the other piece, obviously, to know, because there's certain staff that I need to communicate when we do have the board at meeting, just so I understand and can make sure that's taken care of. And then my other component, just to make sure that we're on the same page for this, when we do the in-person meetings, I will work and dial a friend, probably the 2 sitting to my left, and my wonderful, faithful colleague back in the office, even though she doesn't know that yet, to have us so we can divide and conquer if we're going to try to do the meetings. Because based on this schedule, it looks like some meetings will all run synonymous with one another, so trying to be in 4 different spots is a challenge. But we will make sure that we'll have a representative there for board staff so that we have support for you and then support for the team. And then it does sound like the virtual meetings will be handled completely by HYA, so we'll advertise that, but we're not actually facilitating sending out a Zoom link or a Google link or anything like that. So I think I recapped that correctly, but if not, if you could just let me know, that will help.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Perfect. I think at this point, colleagues were clear. We have given staff direction and HYA direction, and need to make a decision point on actually the focus groups. And we have a motion. Thank you. Yes, let's go ahead. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Sparsa-Strophican. Oh, do you have a question? We have a question. We have a question. Allow me 1 moment before we take a vote. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. So I can support the motion. What my question is that Trustee Satori said about extending the survey just a little beyond, and that was not in the motion.
That has to be a separate. Yes, that will be a separate item.
So we're just approving the focus groups now, and then we'll talk about the extension of the survey. Okay.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for that clarity. Let's go ahead and take the motion.
should be repeated because Lola mentioned the survey timeline.
Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to clarify the motion. I am making a motion to approve Focus Group Model 1, but I want to build in some of the feedback from other board members and grant authority to work this out so that there are some virtual options. I'm going to leave that in the hands of the professionals, but I want to build that into the motion.
Thank you. Trustee Sparsa-Strophican, do you still second?
I will second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Sparsa-Strophican. Please cast your vote. Okay, thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Perfect. now. Are there any other discussion points that we have with respect to, nothing, okay. Okay, Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to extend the survey, but not to September 9th. I'd like to make it until after Labor Day. Yes.
Is that the first? The first is a Sunday.
First is a Sunday, second, I think it's September 3rd.
September 3rd, okay.
To September 3rd.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I like it when we're on the same wavelength sometimes because I had wrote down September 4th, but September 3rd I can work with, so I will second that motion.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman and a second by Trustee Zamora on the survey date extension. Please cast your vote. Super. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Okay, we've got a survey date. We've got clarity on the focus groups, and additional guidance and information will be coming from me with respect to consistency for board attendance at community session groups based off of feedback that was provided at today's meeting, and more to come. Council, Joe, is there anything else that we have to, that you'd like to add to color the conversation? No? Dr. Joseph, Dr. Adams, Ms. Perez, is there anything else?
We'll look forward to
Not for
continuing
me.
to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for walking us through this process. Incredibly grateful for your talent and leadership to get us across this line. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
Have a
you.
great evening. Yes. All right, colleagues, we are going to move on to item 2.2, legislative bill drafts. Before I open this item, because it is an action item, if there anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card, please do so now. Okay, once we begin the presentation, we will no longer accept public comment cards. All right, wonderful. This item, point of contact, is, who is the point of contact? Mr. Story? Hi. Hello. Mr. Keating, welcome. Thank you for coming back to us, and take it away.
Thank you, Madam President, Trustees, Interim Superintendent Brenda Larson-Mitchell. My name is Todd Story, Chief Communications Officer for the Clark County School District. Last month, we came to the Board of School Trustees to discuss possible bill drafts for the 2025 legislative session. As a reminder, the Nevada Revised Statutes grant up to 2 bill draft requests each legislative session to the Clark County School District. Requests must be approved by the Board of School Trustees as an action item and be submitted to the Legislative Council Bureau by September 1st, 2024. Our last discussion resulted in 3 final topics aligned with the platform adopted by the board. Dr. Keating will guide us through the conversation regarding the wishes of the board for the 2 BDR submissions that are due by September 1st. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Garcia Morales, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Larson Mitchell, Brad Keating for the record. Based on last month's conversation, there are 3 topics that the board expressed the most support of. Those included teacher recruitment, retention and development, school bullying, updates to bullying statutes, and additional mental health resources for students. So the first topic for your review, and it's in reference material this evening, is to appropriate dedicated funding to school districts to expand and diversify licensed professional recruitment, retention, and development programs. The second topic, bullying, clarifies the law and allows for students with substantiated discrimination, cyberbullying, or bullying incidents to be transferred to a different school rather than the victim. And the third topic discussed was mental health and the possibility of creating a community and schools mental health partnership to help streamline, understand the role of government agencies, healthcare providers, community organizations in servicing schools. By coordinating efforts, it would be the hope that those mental health services are better aligned to support students in need. We look to the board to further discuss these and any other topics you may have.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to take public comment on this item before we begin discussion, and before we move on to public comment, I want to thank my colleagues, specifically Trustee Cavazos, for raising up the discrepancy that took place around the count, and I know I was counting. I'm grateful to Dr. Larson Mitchell and her team for helping us review the materials and recount the BDR tally that existed for members. And so thank you, colleagues, in advance for that. And I certainly will be asking for help with tallying those numbers this next go-round when we decide on our top two. Okay. All right. For public comment, I have Christian Kiliani.
Again, Madam Chair, members of trustees, Christian Kiliani. You have two bill drafts. Sometimes you find a committee person to do the simpler one, and you don't waste your bill draft on something else. So that's just a tip. And I know former Assemblywoman Irene Bustamante Adams knows how that works. But I wanted to talk about the teacher retention and attraction component. In the 90s, I wrote legislation that created a 1/5 extra PERS credit for people that worked in the district. They'd already had 5 years in, they had to commit another 5, and they got extra PERS, and that worked very well. During the Tide session in 2017, it came off the books. I don't think anybody even realized it came off the books. So I provided the original language to Trustee Cavazos, just so you have it to look at, but that worked, and that was another component that possibly you might want to address. Secondarily, I would suggest, maybe this doesn't have to be a bill draft, maybe it's something you do internally, you really should be looking at split contracts, especially for your pre-K to third graders, where you're doing shared contracts or split contracts. And I think that might be more administrative, but I'm not sure. But you could even have retirees come back in as long as their PERS isn't impacted. So at least you're not doing a full-time substitute teacher. So that would be something else to take a look at. Used to have a loan forgiveness, and I think you did it with IRPA or ARPA or whatever monies, but that went away. So did that loan forgiveness component. I think you should establish a fund. You could do a roll-off of 1% off of some savings or reserves that are there to fund a loan forgiveness, and or people that you need recruit and say, hey, can you go into special ed? You've already got your degree, would you go into this? And you pay and compensate for that part of it. That would be another possibility. I do think you should reopen the contract to renegotiate the 2-to-1 differential between first-time teachers and experienced teachers. It's causing a problem internally, as you well know. There's that needs to be modified at the negotiations table, but you can open the contract if you get agreement. In that, if you do something like that, look at the sick leave payout. Separate from what what happened was in the paper. Just as an example, I think it's been the same for 40 years. When I retired 6 years ago, I had 235 days of sick leave and I got $0 because the fund had already run out of money. So it's a negotiated item, but it's something to take a look at because I think that payout is an incentive to retain people in the long run. Let's see. You could also have talk to PERS and see if retired teachers can come back, and maybe they work with your first-year teachers. They help them set up their classrooms. They help them set up their discipline plan. Simple things. It doesn't have to be full-time. It could be 1 day a week. But at least there's a support person, a mentor, or someone there that's there. But it's the PERS thing that might need to be tweaked, and I'm not sure on that part of it. When I work the election department, I can get paid, but I don't know where the cap is on how much you're allowed to earn. And then I would say it's time to formalize and create a true pipeline in your high schools for a career component of childcare and education and support personnel, if that's the case. And so you actually identify young people in maybe junior year and start finding out credits that they could start being earned, do the dual credit, have CSN work with them. So you've actually got a pipeline of growing your own in the school district. And I think that'll help for down the road. I don't know what you do about the 1,000 shortage that you have right now, but there are some things that need to be taken care of structurally. And so those are just some ideas that I thought you might want to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. It concludes public comment. At this time, we need to provide, entertain discussion and questions to the team, and ultimately, at the end of this item, we need to make sure that we provide clear guidance on what BDRs, which two BDRs we're going to move forward. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Can I get confirmation on the timeline? What is our deadline for getting this into the LCB?
September 1st, sorry, trustees. Madam President, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson-Mitchell. Trustee Brooks, September 1st is the deadline. We have to submit it by September 1st.
Thank you. Okay, and then I will just jump right in and say that I prefer the top two options, teacher recruitment and bullying. I'm not opposed to mental health, but there are 3 BDRs already, and one of them specifically is related to the mental health of children. So I don't think it's beneficial for us. There aren't any bill draft requests for the other 2.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks, and I appreciate that. But Todd, will you all be helping us keep track of the counts of what members are saying? Yeah.
Madam President, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson-Mitchell, yes, we will assist in that effort.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I was just wondering, is Washoe putting forward a teacher recruitment, retention, and development type bill draft? And could we work with them? Do you know?
Madam President, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson-Mitchell, Todd Story for the record. Trustee Guzman, I'm not aware that Washoe has submitted that language specifically. They do get one BDR.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that that is specifically their BDR at this time.
And I'm just curious because I know that Lander County pays their teachers to become SPED certified. And I know that there are other things. There's support personnel and grow your own programs in other districts. And so I thought maybe, even in ours, I thought maybe there might be a BDR already for that. Okay. And then the bullying, I haven't heard anything about bullying. So I would ask, are you aware of the mental health BDRs and who put them forward?
President Garcia Morales, members of the board, interim superintendent Dr. Larson Mitchell. There's about 200 bill drafts that have been submitted thus far. The specific language has not been drafted yet for any of those. The LCB's drafting them. We've had some communication with some legislators that have talked to us about mental health specifically. Nothing around the topic that's before you currently, but we're working with them to try to make sure that we wouldn't waste the BDR moving forward.
Okay, so my question is, do they have a financial component? Because I know that legislators will put forward bills that do not have a financial component because they are easier to pass. And this particular one has a financial component to assist us with our mental health programs. So I'm asking.
President Garcia Morales, members of the board, Brad Keating for the record. My current understanding early on in the process for the next legislative session is that the bills we're aware of right now do not have dollars tied to them. Leadership is looking at something mental health related, but I don't know if that will have any financial dollars next to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. My question has to do about the teacher retention, recruitment, retention, and development. I know that we, in the short amount of time that we've had our new HR director, we have made progress. And thank you for the interim superintendent's leadership in that category, because we didn't have to pass legislation to make improvement, but I think there are some things in this category that could help. And so my question is, do you get together with the HR team in order to address this area? That's one question. Number two, in the past, I have heard that both our team and CCEA and maybe some of the other units would get together to talk about, right, how to strategize around these areas. And so my question is, does CCEA, in their thoughts about bill drafts, is that one of them, the teacher recruitment? Is that something that they're going after? I don't know if you guys gather with them in order to find that out. And then that was it. Those are just two questions. Do you get together with our HR team regarding the first suggestion, because we are making strides? Two, do you get together with the CCA team and to identify if there's some synergy? And then third, I know that public comment, there was a last legislative session where we formalized the teacher pipeline. Now, it had some, not every piece of legislation is perfect, and so it has challenges. And so instead of recreating the wheel, how do we fix that one to make it more conducive to the region and exactly what we want? We can't do it all just in one calendar year. I mean, I think that was part of the flaw, but I don't know if somebody submitted a BDR yet to make changes to that. Thank you.
President Garcia Morales, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell, Todd Story for the record. So input was gathered from each of the department heads, including HR, in the development of the platform and then the distillation to the topics that you have all chosen here to get us to this stage in this conversation. We do work with the bargaining units to understand what each other are trying to accomplish for the legislative session, so that we are, where we can, working together, not always aligned, but try to align as much as possible, because we do have different ideas about how to approach things. And then, so including CCEA, ESEA, the police, we work very closely with all of them throughout the legislative session to ensure as much alignment as is possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. To be clear, did you already provide your top two? Or are you just asking questions and then you'll come back to top two? Forgive me, I should have asked also. Give me 1 second while I pull up. I took you off. There you are.
I did last time provide my top two, but I would, hearing strategy now, I may adjust that to get more wins, since other people can take on other bills.
Okay. Do you have, it would serve us in this round to be able to provide staff direction in terms of which top two, which are your top two? Yeah. Allow me 1 second here.
Thank you. For me, my top two would be the teacher recruitment, retention, and development, and bullying. I do believe the mental health has a financial component, and it is harder to pass something when you add a fiscal note. And I think there might be some, especially in teacher recruitment, there's existing language that could be modified, and I think we would have a better strategy working with other entities. So teacher recruitment, retention and development, and adjusting the legislation on bullying.
Thank you. Okay, Trustee Sparsa-Stroff again.
Thank you. So I wrote out my questions, and I have questions for each. So kind of echoing what Trustee Guzman was saying about the first one for teacher recruitment retention. And I know you don't have the number, but I think it's important we go in what is going to be our ask. So I'm just going to ask the question, what would be the ideal level of funding that CCSD would receive, and how would CCSD expand and diversify programs with that funding? I think that's the part where is a challenge for us because of, we don't know that number. Okay, so I don't expect an answer. Second question, topic 2 for bullying. So the wording of this is very specific. It does say to, I'm just going to read it if anyone is listening, support updates to bullying statutes allowing students with substantiated discrimination, cyberbullying, or bullying incidents to be transferred to a different school rather than the victim, and clarify that the statutes are administrative. There are times and situations that maybe it's the victim that would rather be transferred to have a fresh start in a different setting. So what I guess my ask would be is that something that we can consider to amend and adjust, that there are both options? One is for the victim to be transferred, which I'm sure is probably an option on, or maybe you can answer that for me. Is that an option currently?
President Garcia.
Oh, forgive me. I'm not. Dr. Larson Mitchell? Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Brenda Larson Mitchell for the record, yes. So it may be that the victim may have the opportunity to choose a different school. It may be that the offender has an opportunity to choose a different school. So they both have options because there are times when the offender may want to go to a different school as well. So we can definitely include the may in there to give schools options. When we look at the number of substantiated bullying allegations that we have, to automatically be transferring kids would be too much and could be chaotic and cause more problems. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you for that, interim superintendent. I appreciate that. Then the last question for the third is there's definitely a financial ask. And I think the clarification and sentence 2, improve access to mental health services through coordinated efforts and provide financial assistance for families affected by mental health issues. My question is are we providing the funding for families to receive Tier 2 and 3 mental health services, or are we providing the funding directly to school sites to be able to provide those services for students?
Madam President, Trustees, Interim Superintendent Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell. So in the conversation that we had during the board briefings is that there are identified needs within the Tier 2 and Tier 3 mental health support. I think the intent of the conversation was to address those specifically, how that's addressed, whether that's through this collective effort or that there would be additional funding that would allow them to go into the community to get that support one way or the other, but that they would have access to obtaining those services somehow.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think I am going to put in my top 2 now. Just let's get this down. I actually have a change of opinion. Having looked at some of the drafts that are out there, that number 1 is definitely going to be considered by someone, and many perhaps. So my top 2 would be number 1, mental health, and then number 2, the bullying, with those adjustments that were discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Soares-Strofican. Trustee Cavazos, you're up.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sorry, but I didn't hear what Trustee Ramona, as far as the South African, her number 2 was.
Okay, Trustee.
My number 2 is the bullying.
Was the bullying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Keating and Mr. Story, for putting up with all of our questions during briefings. I know I asked a lot of them. And Mr. Story, you very explicitly and correctly stated what my concerns were, with the mental health. First of all, this is what is stated right now is not exactly what my request was. So I'll read what it was as I basically talked to you during the briefing. And I know that it was really hard. And I know our president was trying her best to try to get everything down, correctly. But basically what I was asking for was a collaboration with community partnerships to provide access for on-site mental health counseling targeting Tier 2 and Tier 3 issues, with kind of a subtopic that even regional hubs would be an acceptable option. And then we had a discussion having to do with that we do have mental health services right now. We have Panorama, which is basically a surveying service. We have Carasalis, which is a referral service. And we have Hazel Health, which provides telehealth. So something I wanted to ask our experts right here is I did ask a question having to do with previous bills that touched on bullying. Also, if you had a chance to look back at those, because I am receiving questions saying, well, didn't we cover that already? Your bill draft is so specific, talking about as far as the victim being able to go to another school. So I'm getting questions about that. Were you able, because I wasn't, were you able to look back and see if any of those previous bills could basically be seen as already covering that?
President Garcia Morales, trustees, interim superintendent Brenda Larson Mitchell, Todd Story for the record. Yes, trustee Cavazos. We looked at later on in the statute, there is language that says essentially the least burden on the victim, right? Whatever plan is developed to address the situation, that the victim should be held, with the least harm because of the outcome. And so in seeking to draft language, we would want to provide that option, that if it's substantiated, that then it may be, as the interim superintendent was referring, it may be that the offender is moved or the victim, right? But that choice is allowed within the confines of the decision-making process.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. So I need to say something here, and that's that, we're talking about bullying, especially cyberbullying, which is so prevalent right now. So many of the referrals that I get, so many of the referrals that our social workers, our psychologists, our counselors get are concerned with bullying. So I'm looking at this here as where we're looking at bullying, the specific item having to do with bullying and the victim, and not looking at the larger concept of the mental health on-site services now not being provided at our school sites unless the school sites can afford and do choose to fund it themselves. So I'm kind of looking as bullying as a larger sense of that. I did get a chance this past weekend to chat with a couple of legislators. Things are kind of close-mouthed as far as specifics not being provided right now. They are asking why we are not, covering that aspect. Tier 2 and Tier 3 mostly have to do with self-harm and suicidal ideation. They also have to do with sometimes harm intended for others. So I would have to say that my top two would be teacher recruitment and retention and mental health. Not because I don't think that the bullying aspect is important, but I'm looking at that as it's a component of the larger mental health aspect. And also too, with the teacher recruitment and retention, again, kudos to our interim superintendent and HR for a great effort on recruitment, but I think we really need to pay attention to the retention factor. Why are people leaving? How can we retain them? And what can be done in that aspect? Thank you, Madam President.
Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Oh, I'm freezing in here, sorry. I was looking at the BDR list, and the amount of BDRs we have of provisions relating to education is a little overwhelming, so I'm going to give you all your flowers now because it's going to be a long session. But I do agree with Trustee Cavazos about the mental health. When we spoke about it at the last meeting, I had a different understanding that it was going to be more focused on how we get resources in the schools. I do want to say that I do appreciate the district with our crisis teams when there is something major that happens and we have a large group of people going into the schools and they're there for a few days, supporting, but I would love to see that be expanded. But as of now, what we have presented to us, my top two will be the teacher recruitment, retention and development, and the mental health.
Thank you. Okay. Colleagues, we haven't heard from a couple of members regarding their top two. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to go with the top two. I feel like everybody's already said everything. Thank you.
Top two on this list, meaning teacher recruitment and bullying? Yep. Got it. Thank you. Trustee Satori?
Yes, I'm going to go. So can I just clarify, because I want to make sure I understood what you said correctly. So that you said that the bullying component is already covered, has been covered, correct? Or has been covered previously?
President Garcia Morales, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell. The current statute indicates that the victim is the one that can choose to be moved.
Okay.
So what we would be seeking to do is to offer the broadest options within the confines of the circumstances, that if the victim does want to be moved, that might be the best answer. But if they don't want to be moved, then is the option available to move the offender. The law currently does not allow that. It only says that the burden should be the least on the victim in the circumstances.
Okay. And then listening to the conversation earlier about some of the mental health and the financial impact, I was interested in that. I guess I'm going to go with, and I suppose that will become more, the teacher recruitment, retention, and development, it will become more fine-tuned as we actually present it to get it more of a specific, what the ask is or what the request is, rather than this more general statement. It'll be, okay, just to make sure I had that clarified also. So I'm going to go number one, teacher recruitment and retention, with that saying that we're going to refine that and have a little bit more of a focus of how that is going to be utilized. And then number two, bullying.
Thank you, Trustee Satori. Did we hear from everybody? Trustee Guzman.
I'm going to go with teacher recruitment and mental health.
Thank you. I believe you just need mine. For the reasons shared earlier by colleagues and the explanation around the additional resources that are absolutely necessary. I'm not in favor of, I am in favor of additional supports for students who have the highest needs, of course, first and foremost. And I think in a broader context, I'm more supportive of I would be supportive of increased funding, which I know the district has already, the board has already shared, increased funding to help us adequately fund programs that our students or families need. However, that is a higher priority. And in this case, I don't want to take away resources for a specific piece of the work when there could be resources spread out throughout the district for a variety of challenges that exist in our community. So for me, my top two are teacher recruitment and bullying, with the modification that was provided and recommended by Trustee Esparza-Strophagan / team. Okay. Do we have a count? And could you all review what you have, please? Thank you, colleagues, while we take a moment to allow them to read over their numbers. Trustee Guzman, do you want to? Everyone is cross-checking here. We've got a couple of folks. Thank you for that. Trustee Guzman.
Yeah, so I voted for teacher recruitment, retention, and development, and then mental health. Is that what you got? Okay.
All right, Mr. Story, what do we have? Final results?
Yes, President Garcia Morales, trustees, interim superintendent, Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell. We have 8 for teacher recruitment and retention. We have 6 for bullying, and we have 4 for mental health.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, colleagues, I will seek a motion from the board for the top 2 that were recommended based off of votes. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to move forward our bill draft request for teacher recruitment, retention, and development, and bullying.
Thank you. Trustee Williams?
I second.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Is there confusion on the floor? Okay, do you want to gun on the mic? Allow me 1 second. We're going to pause this vote. I don't know how to turn on the microphone for Trustee Zamora. Let's see. Stop. Cancel. I'm sorry. I'm going to cancel the vote. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize for asking a little too late. You had mentioned we were doing the motion, but I had heard something about with the bullying, it was going to be with the caveats or suggestion that Trustee Sparza-Straffigan had said. Is that not included in this motion?
It is.
Okay, it is?
What part is?
I think she had mentioned something about the language changing, and I think Lola knows what I'm talking about. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, thank you. So you're, want the motion restated?
Yes.
Let's see. Trustee Brooks, please restate your motion.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me fine tune that. I'm going to make a motion to put forward our bill draft request for teacher recruitment, retention, and development, and bullying with the additional language the board discussed, building in flexibility in the bullying one.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks, Trustee Williams?
I still second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Great. Perfect. Teamwork. All right, colleagues, we 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Story. Thank you, Dr. Keating, for your time. I appreciate all your work and your continued work on this process. All right. Colleagues, we are now going to move on to item 2.3. This is not an action item. This is the Bond Oversight Committee. Bond Oversight Committee representative is Trustee Brooks, and I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Brooks to walk us through some of her updates.
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, I recently joined Bond Oversight. When I joined, they were in the process of revising their bylaws. After I joined, I met with my committee appointee. She had some concerns about the functioning of the group. It became clear at that time that there was a little bit of confusion between the group and staff. So after this meeting, I read the committee's bylaws, and then I also read the GP 14, which is the board's policy related to committee structure. Once I did that, it became very clear that the confusion in the committee is related to the fact that their bylaws do not align with board policy and how committees are supposed to function. And also, they were missing some key processes and some things that might be beneficial to be included, like, for instance, if a school is going to be closed or something, that they are kept into the loop. So some things were just glaringly, obviously missing. Also in their bylaws, I learned that the board is supposed to be providing them training. And to my knowledge, the board has never provided them training during my tenure. So given this information, I actually committed to work with the group to help them add clarity and to make sure that they're included in key decisions that are related to providing oversight of bond funds. So I wanted to give the boards a heads up that on a future agenda, we will be focused on providing them some very basic governance training, and their executive leadership team will be working to resolve the issues within their bylaws. I'm trying to find an external person from another district to provide the training. If that's not an option, I offered to do it, but I am trying to find someone external. This update is just for the sake of transparency, because some of these changes are going to come to a future agenda item, which falls under open meeting law. I can try to answer your questions, but I can't go into specifics about what changes would be in the bylaws or other things that would be voted on by this committee.
Thank you for the update, Trustee Brooks, and for your time and attention to ensure that the committee is successful. I don't see any questions on this item, colleagues, so I do see Someone jumping in? All right, Trustee Cavazos, come on through.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Trustee Brooks, for your update. We appreciate it. What would you say was the most glaring aspect as far as being the new member, the new trustee representing the bond oversight, that you saw the need that, that we needed to do some updates? Was it, well, I'll let you answer. I had some idea, but.
There seemed to be a lot of confusion about whether or not Lundy Elementary would come before them. Once I researched the issue, it doesn't come before them because we have a policy that doesn't include them. So if it is an expectation that it's something that they would want to come before them, that's something that would need to be spelled out within their bylaws.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So the Lundy issue was kind of like the glaring kind of red flag?
There were some other red flags, but that will be addressed during our policy review.
Okay, thank you. When you say that you are searching for an outside person to do that, as far as the training, I believe you're referring to, where are we looking for an outside person?
It would be an external board member, a board member from NASB, most likely.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarifications. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee Zamora?
Oh, thank you, Madam President. I was going to ask, would that be something we reach out to NASB about and ask for support?
Yeah, that's something that's in the works.
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Brooks. That concludes your presentation and this item. This is not an action item, and we are not taking public comment on this particular item. So we're going to move on to item 2.4, the Debt Management Commission. That is also not an action item, and I am your point of contact for that. So colleagues, per GP 15, the board committee's policy, a member of the Board of Trustees is assigned, voted in, by the board, by the majority of the board, to the Debt Management Commission. And they also happen to serve on the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Commission. One member serves on both. And I was appointed by the board last month. So thank you for that. I'm hoping to provide you a high-level overview of this commission and why it's important, and also go into just some things. My intention is to share knowledge with you, because sometimes these committees are obscure and don't really, if we're not sharing them with each other, it can easily go by the wayside. So the Debt Management Commission is, the board voted last month, and I'm your member. I do want to share with you that right after I was appointed by the board, I participated in my first meeting on July 11th. And on July 11th, the Debt Management Commission met, and they apparently meet several times, just a couple of times a year, I believe 2 times a year. This meeting that took place on July 11th was a special meeting where the Debt Commission heard about heard a bond issue for CCSD, or request for approval of bonds for CCSD. That was $600 million, and they heard a couple of items for the water district. There is another meeting that's coming up on August 29th at 9 a.m., and I will be present at that, along with our CCSD representatives and Zion Public Financial. They help us generate reports to ensure that we have good bonds and bond ratings, and ensure that all of the requirements are necessary to all the requirements that are necessary for us to request bonds exist. So we had this meeting on July 11th, and I want to share with you that the district requested $600 million for construction projects. And while the bond request did not get approved at this meeting, it is expected that this item will come back on August 29th. I want to point to the meeting that took place on July 11th. The minutes for the meeting, both the recording and the actual minutes are available on the county's website under DMC minutes and recording for July 11th. So I hope to have an update for you on the 29th at that time with a favorable response of the debt commission's, debt management's commission funding approval of CCSD $600 million worth of bonds. So I'm happy to entertain any questions at this time, colleagues, and grateful for the opportunity to serve. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank you and Trustee Brooks for your reports tonight, and hopefully that this is a new trend that we can have with having the other members of the board being able to report on their committees also. I will volunteer also. Thank you.
You're next, Trustee Cavazos. I love it. Thank you for that. Let's add that to the September meeting. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, and thank you for this update. It kind of puts together a couple of puzzle pieces that I heard at the Lundy meeting. Is Lundy the reason why we were not approved?
Thank you for that, Trustee Guzman. It was a request that was made at public comment to, at the Debt Management Commission's meeting. A public comment was made to specifically request the delay or denial of the district's bonds so that the district could have an opportunity to make a final determination on Lundy.
Okay.
And in the minutes, specifically on page 12, page 12 of 7, on page 12, after I had made the motion, the chairperson mentioned that the school board has not made a final determination, specifically around Lundy, yet, but we should give them an opportunity to make a determination. And that seemed to have, there was a large discussion by the group on Lundy, despite Lundy not being agendized or potentially even a part of a bond request.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Do we have any historical information on whether or not we've ever had this occur before? Or is this a novel situation?
There has been another instance where the bonds for the district were denied. There was, I believe I don't remember the actual number, date, and time, but excuse me, when it was last denied, but there is some historical insight. This is a very rare occasion, and this time it was brought up specifically over one school.
Thank you. And then another question is, do we have any idea of the potential impacts to construction or modernization projects in schools that are not Lundy?
Right. So if the debt commission, for example, does not pass our request, our clear request for bonds on August 29th, that means that the district will not be able to provide construction projects or have any new bills or make any modifications or changes that we're expected to use for the bonds resources. So unfortunately, I have no indication of whether that will be something that will take place, but a lot of people may be impacted with their jobs and, of course, with respect to our students. The construction projects that impact our students may be significant. $600 million worth.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional insight.
Okay, colleagues, thank you for that, and I will keep you posted after August 29th once the meeting takes place. Okay, we're going to move on to item 2.5, that's Lundy Elementary School. This is an action item, and so before I continue with this item, I would like to invite anybody who has not completed public comment cards to please submit those. Otherwise, once the presentation begins, we will go ahead and no longer take cards. We do have 2 individuals who signed up for public comment, so we'll go ahead and get, or maybe some more. Just kidding. Yeah, Thank you, thank you. Wonderful. Okay. All right, colleagues, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Larson Mitchell, who is going to kick us off with the presentation. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, for the record, Brenda Larson Mitchell. After the June 27th, 2024 regular board meeting, staff was tasked to explore alternative solutions to allow the school to remain open. The team is here this afternoon to share the actions we have taken since that time and to describe some of the possible options. We began meeting with community members and dignitaries, and Region Superintendent Tomlinson contacted parents and guardians regarding the upcoming school year and educational options. During our presentation, we will review the reference materials that were posted, both reference materials A and B. And at this time, with your permission, Madam President, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Tomlinson.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Lindsay Tomlinson, Region 1 Superintendent for the record. I want to begin by sharing with you the progress to date since the June 27th regular board meeting. After that board meeting, I and the staff in Region 1 contacted all parents and guardians on June 28th regarding the upcoming school year and their educational options. Throughout the month of July, I worked to ensure every student was enrolled for day one, working through the change of school assignment and other options. I communicated with the Transportation Department in regards to Regulation 3535, which provides an opportunity to receive payments in lieu of transportation due to extraordinary circumstances for those students who would qualify. As of right now, I want to provide the current enrollment status of all students. As of Friday, August 2nd, 2024, there are 5 students enrolled through the change of school assignment option. 2 students have been enrolled in a magnet school within CCSD. 1 is enrolled at Indian Springs Elementary. 1 has left to charter school, and 1 is no longer enrolled in CCSD. Transportation has been confirmed that there will be an adult on the bus to supervise all students that are going to Indian Springs. And all parents who are eligible through the COSA process to receive payment in lieu of transportation were provided the documentation on August 5th, 2024. At this time, Assistant Superintendent Brandon McLaughlin.
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Brandon McLaughlin, Assistant Superintendent, Construction Development Division, for the record. So on July 8th, 2024, I met up with the Clark County School District building official, the Clark County building official, and deputy building official. After a brief walkthrough of the damage structure and later review of the engineering assessment report that was conducted in September of 2023, the Clark County building officials verbally indicated that the Clark County School District building officials' determinations were on the safety and necessary repairs were consistent with what they would expect as an allied municipal agency. Second, the cost estimate as a part of the engineering damage assessment conducted in September of 2023 was performed by a firm called Ritter, Levitt, Bucknall, RLB. These guys are one of the most prominent independent construction cost estimating professional services companies in the world. RLB estimated the cost of the work in September 2023 dollars to be approximately $5.357000, so $357 million. Sorry. I know there was a lot of discussion around that when we last met, so we certainly wanted to obtain second opinions. Martin Harris Construction has a very long-standing relationship with the district, and they were the ones that performed the emergency stabilization work back in September of 2023. So I provided the damage assessment report and the RLB cost estimate to Martin Harris Construction to obtain a second opinion of the estimated costs for the necessary repairs. Martin Harris in July 2024 dollars concluded that that same scope of work would cost approximately $6.8 million inclusive of low voltage improvements not captured in RLB's estimate. Another item that was brought up in our last meeting was portable classroom structures. So on that topic, the Mount Charleston area is known as a special structural region. And as such, 100 pounds per square foot of snow loading must be engineered to be permitted at this location. Unfortunately, all of the portables currently owned by the district are engineered to withstand 20 to 30 pounds per square foot of snow load on the roof structure. Now, the district certainly explored the availability of portables for purchase that would meet the necessary snow load requirements. They do have a cost premium, and they would have to be transported from other mountainous regions such as Colorado, Alaska, or specifically manufactured with a build time of over 4 months from an executed contract. Another item that was brought up was Extreme Cubes. They are a modular structure manufacturer over in Henderson. It was brought up as an alternative that could potentially sustain the required structural snow loads, and a public commenter made mention they were willing to partner with the district. I connected with the CEO of Extreme Cubes the week following our last meeting, and while they would be thrilled to provide a quote to the district, no additional discussions or declarations had been made by the CEO as far as what was indicated by the public commenter. So at this time, I would like to pass it to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Brad Keating.
Thank you, Brandon. Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Brad Keating for the record. On July 18th, 2024, Dr. Larson Mitchell and members of the executive team observed the exterior of the Earl B. Lundy Elementary School building. Brenda Talley, a community member, also toured with us the outside and exterior of the building. The team also that day visited the Las Vegas Clark County Library District's Mount Charleston location. There is a suitable conference room there, which could work as a short-term instructional space, if agreeable. The team also visited the retreat on Charleston Peak. This is one very large conference space immediately adjacent to the bar and restaurant. There's a smaller conference room available as well down a very dark hotel corridor, presenting numerous safety challenges for our students, especially bathroom-wise. Last, the team visited Mount Charleston Baptist Church. There's a large main congregational space at the church. Site has numerous clearings where a modular classroom building may be suitable at the space. However, the use of Mount Charleston Baptist Church may be a bit more difficult due to insurance, risk management, or other legal concerns.
Thanks, Dr. Keating. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Larson Mitchell. We also took some time to investigate external opportunities for funds to help support the repair or some of these other options that we've been looking into. Of the possibilities we looked at, we were most hopeful about a program that was offered or is offered by the United States Department of Agriculture, which is called the Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program. However, when we reached out to the USDA and had a conversation with them, they suggested that it would be unlikely that we would qualify for a grant through that program because the district would have had to have first attempted traditional means of financing and been denied. And in addition, the criteria for approval on the grant side of the program prioritizes low-income rural communities, which Mount Charleston is not. So after some of these different analyses, we met with members of the Mount Charleston community at the Mount Charleston Library. And some of what I'll share with you this afternoon is also memorialized in one of your reference materials, 2.05B. But I'll speak it to the record as well. After a significant question and answer period, Dr. Larson Mitchell and Mr. McLaughlin introduced the proposed solution to build a 2-classroom addition to the Mount Charleston Library as a permanent solution for Lundy Elementary School. The community's general response to the library addition was favorable, but only as a temporary solution. So in summary, the staff interpretations of the community's response is that it was abundantly clear to us that the community wishes for Earl B. Lundy Elementary School to be repaired with a possible future option of expanding from serving kindergarten through grade 5 to pre-kindergarten through grade 8. In addition, the community wants students to attend school on the mountain as soon as possible, if even in a temporary location. As through the conversation, we learned that there is some skepticism remaining in the community regarding the cost estimates, some of the safety declarations we've made, and safety mitigation of the existing site, as well as the methods for determining some of those pieces. And also a request was made for the Clark County building officials' opinion in writing. The community believes the Mount Charleston Baptist Church to be the best solution for the temporary instruction on the mountain, as the facility already has classrooms and kitchen access. Though less favorable, using the existing library space would also be acceptable as a temporary solution. During our discussions, trustees Guzman and Satori and staff who were there made sure the community understood several specific points. First, that neither staff nor individual trustees could make any commitments because the decisions need to be made by the full board. Second, that the district would not be recommending the library additions as a temporary solution and then also recommend the repair of the school. And third, that we understood it to be more difficult to use the Mount Charleston Baptist Church than the library as a temporary solution due to some insurance, risk management, or legal concerns that are a little bit more challenging when it comes from a non-existing government property. Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Kelly. Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. A mutually beneficial opportunity would be to partner with the Las Vegas Clark County Library District, and the district could build 1 to 2 classrooms onto the library's current building to hold classes on the mountain. The way we see this possible is to utilize the remaining $750,000 of insurance proceeds to fund a portion of this, and the district would likely need to provide an additional $500,000 to $750,000 in addition. The district would still need to properly remediate and potentially demolish the unsafe structure of the current school site for an additional several $million, though we don't know the full extent of the necessary remediations at the current site in totality. The district could utilize general obligation bonds, bond funds to revise the 2015 capital improvement plan to repair the existing school at an estimated cost of, like I mentioned, $6.8 million in today's dollars, and of course, subject to actual bids received and awarded by the board. I do want to run through reference material 2.05A that was provided to you and on the screen here. If you guys have the handout available, we'll just walk through it very briefly. This is the 2 predominant options that surfaced throughout many explored options discussed here tonight. The 2 that stood out to staff as we discussed and presented throughout the last 6 weeks. On the left-hand side, you see the repair the existing Earl B. Lundy Elementary School. We look at the common components on the left-hand side. On the y-axis, you'd see the general proposed scope would be the assessment scope provided in the 134-page assessment report that's been provided across the community and to the board now. The anticipated construction costs, like I mentioned, would be estimated at $6.8 million. The estimated time frame is through a design build procurement method. We see a path that could see the repairs made as early as fall 2025. The proposed delivery method, like I mentioned, the most suitable for this would be likely design build project delivery method. The proposed funding would be Fund 315, which is our general obligation bond issuances, and the necessary approvals at the board's discretion, though you guys exercise consideration with the Bond Oversight Committee recommendations, but the Bond Oversight Committee could see that as an item, but likely the Board of School Trustees has the ability to approve that here tonight. So, on the right-hand side, just again running the parallel, but solution number 2, which is to explore an agreement for construction of an addition at the Mount Charleston Library for Earl B. Lundy Elementary School. Again, this would be currently proposed at 2 classrooms as a generalized scope. We project this to cost approximately $1.4 million. Again, that's in 2024 dollars and dependent on bid and selection and award by the board. Again, we see this time frame being as early as spring of 2026. The design build methodology would still be an appropriate methodology for this to have a rapid deployment of a construction solution up there. I will emphasize there is a with or without bridging documents. So bridging documents is a way to take any proposed solution to a more schematic design level. With that, you refine the scope and ensure a more competitive pricing environment. So just a ulterior differentiation you guys may want to consider as we discuss this item. Again, this would be utilizing Fund 315 general obligation bonds, and again, the Board of School Trustees could make that determination here tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Interim Superintendent Dr. Larson Mitchell.
Thank you.
Forgive me, I'm sorry. Can you please come back in the queue? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. For the record, Brenda Larson Mitchell. We hope that this information is helpful, and we're happy to address any additional questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to go straight into public comment and then jump into discussion by the board. Let's see, we'll begin with individuals who signed up in advance. Chris Giunciliani, please, followed by, I'm sorry, Pete Dallin. Give me Pete, you'll go next.
Chris Giunciliani. I want to thank Interim Superintendent and her staff for coming to the mountain and holding a meeting finally with the community up there. And I want to thank Trustees Satori and Guzman, who came and spent the time to listen to us. I'm now not hearing this briefing. I feel like I've been blindsided, so I'm not really quite sure how to address some of the concerns. This graph, which just got posted before your meeting, is missing a column, and it should say insurance rebate. You got insurance money in January to repair. If you don't agree with the repairs, or if the repairs are not completed, you can still go back to that insurance company and ask for additional revenue. That's just how the standard works. More importantly, though, the community wants the kids back on the mountain. So the solution was come up, divide the library room, or use the church. An MOU with the church can be done very easily. You do church holds church on every high school campus already in Clark County School District, so it's not something to oversee. If you needed to do a portable, you could add that to the church, and the portable there does not need the snow load. The snow load is only up in the central part. It isn't where, because our metro station, literally right next door to them, is not made up of a snow load portable. I'm frustrated because you paid $120,000 in September and hired an assessment team to go in and do the inspection on the building. They then contracted with Wright Engineers, who's #1 engineering company in the United States. And what they said in their report, Wright Engineers said, after the temporary fixes were done for $125,000 by Martin and Harris, in our professional opinion, the main structure may be occupied when the temporary measures of supporting the storage room are completed. That was done. And you have received the funding. So why are you not doing a column that says, do the repairs that you got refunded for? If you need more money, ask the insurance money for more. I have to report back to the governor tomorrow because he's weighed in, our congressman's weighed in, the state senator's weighed in, the assembly person's weighed in. Reopen Lundy. We can work together. I'm frustrated now because I don't know that we got resolved with the solutions. We had the temporary solution, which it sounds like you might be able to get there tonight, but not the other. And as I gave Ms. Tomlinson, because they asked at the meeting, I went to every parent, got the home phone numbers and the parent's name. We have 14 kids that could be in your pre-K to 2, and your 3rd to 4th graders would be 13 kids this school year. So I still don't know why you're doing this pushback. And I don't want to hear that it's just because it's white kids, because I know that that's floating around in the district. That has nothing to do with it. The reason I went and testified on the bond and asked them to delay or deny it, because that was me, was because we're the highest taxing district in the county. And we will be paying for an asset that is closed, and they asked some tax. So I urge you to
Thank you, Chris.
listen to the parents and
Thank you.
do the right thing.
Thank you, Chris. Pete, come on up, please. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Pete, come on up, followed by Ed Gonzalez. Pete, is Pete here? No, not here. All right. I am looking for a Pete, not Pete. Yes, sir. Forgive me. No, I'm sorry that's the case. Did you submit a yellow card? Thank you. I'm sorry. I need to be consistent with all public comment, and so I did ask for members of the public who had an interest in completing public comment to please submit a yellow card. So I'm sorry. I'm going to move on to Ed.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ed Gonzalez. I came here to thank the superintendent and her team for going to Mount Charleston. That was a lot of the contention was this item came to the board is that had not happened. We've had in the past, as I mentioned in a previous meeting, when we had a topic of school closures, we've had that conversation, I think, in 2008 when we talked about places like Good Springs being extraordinarily tiny, and that was during the time of the Great Recession. We had a budget deficit. It's a much different time than that. So I do appreciate that because I think that's one thing that the community wanted was to have a voice. I still think it's a little troublesome that you have a policy that you could shut down a school without ever talking to the community. In the same aspect that if you did a zoning change and sent them down the hill, you had been forced to have a community meeting, and that's absolutely absurd. I would look at when you talk about, Trustee Brooks mentioned things that bond oversight and some of the updates, you might want to look at that because you did recently update that. And I feel like it was a situation where you looked at the policy because you were probably looking at a school closure. So that's one thing. Two, when you talk about cost, there's additional monies that Lundy does have. And one of the budget reports that was put up mandated by AB 469, there's about $400,000 in that budget that's in carryover. And in one of the SOT meetings, and I should say it was a Lundy and Indian Springs SOT. So Lundy hasn't had a functional SOT since, I believe, 2018. And Lundy doesn't go to Indian Springs, the one parent they have on there. By the way, none of that conforms with the law. But in one of those documents, it said it could be as high as $500,000. I only put that in there because it's in there. Mr. Gowdy could probably give a better explanation because he did say in one of the meetings you had two different budgets on there. And the reason, obviously, because it's a small school, you have the role allocation. You're keeping two different books onto that. So additional money that could be used could come from the carryover onto that. But I mostly am here just to thank the superintendent for having that conversation because regardless of what the decision is, it's good to have the conversation in the community. Trustee Zamora mentioned in the meeting when you first had it that it was viewed differently that maybe other communities have long bus rides because you made a commitment, and I think in 1966, to build a school in this community. And so you always want to have an opportunity to see, can you keep the kids up on that hill? I mean, there's other things I'm pretty sure Lundy's probably thinking about now, which is, should the kids even go to Indian Springs? You know, we talk about the time that Lundy was built, the closest high school was Western. I mean, I thought they had to go through the back roads and channels. The bus doesn't go that way. The bus drives by a lot of schools. But I don't live in Mount Charleston. That is not my option to say what they should do. But I'm pretty sure there's other ways for them if they want to look at a broader aspect, to look at other things as well, just besides where people are going to school. But I do hope that you can find a way to keep the schools in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Guzman. Trustee Guzman, go ahead, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I gave you, going to ask Trustee Sparsa-Strophican to jump back on the queue, and I'll have her go next.
Thank you. I also want to thank my cohort, Lisa Satori, who sat with me in a very comfortable chair, and we actually did go up north. I do feel that this presentation was taken the wrong way, and that's because our staff has to give the facts, not what we actually feel about what was said on the mountain, and so that's my job. And I'm going to tell you. So when we went up there, we thought we had the solution. We truly did. And we were excited about it. And we wanted to tell the entire group about the 2-classroom add-on to the library. We were excited about that. And our staff was ready to tell them. And the Lundy folks turned it on us on a dime. And they decided that it would be great as a temporary and that we would fix Lundy. And I had to shut that down. And I had to let them know that we had 2 options. And those 2 options were, one, that we would have a temporary room at the library for a teacher to teach immediately at the to get started this year on the mountain, and then we would either build the 2 rooms onto the library or we would fix Lundy. But the thing was that with fixing Lundy, we were going to get bids for Lundy to see if it was even something that we could do, and that no decision would be made without talking to the trustees. None. There was no decision made. No one said anything. We just showed them the options. And the reason why we needed to get the bids is because the folks on Lundy don't believe us. They don't believe any of the information we're giving because it's not in writing. And they want it in writing. And so once we had the bids, if the bids were too much and we could not afford it, we would go back and talk to the community and propose those solutions again. The thing is that we needed to bring it back to you to see if that was something that was feasible. We are not blindsiding you, Chris. But we needed to come back and tell you, and the staff did a fantastic job explaining to you exactly what happened with facts and not feelings, because there were a lot of people who had feelings that wanted us to just go and fix it. They wanted to pull up carpets. They wanted to pull down drywall. They were very passionate about it, but the staff of CCSD were very focused, and they knew that they had to follow certain rules and regulations, and they presented them. So I want us all to understand that the presentation, although it may sound like it's not taking into effect what we heard on the mountain, it absolutely is. And so I want you all to know that when you have your discussion, because we have to do this right. There are people that are very worried about their kids, and I get it. But I also get that we have a fiduciary duty as trustees, and we take that oath, and I take it very seriously. And so we have to do this right, but we have to know what we're doing. Okay? Thank you. I'm not lecturing, I'm just telling.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Sparsa-Stroffigan, you're next.
So I want to echo the fact that I appreciate that the trustees and our interim superintendent went and had that hard, crucial conversation that should have happened probably the very beginning of this entire process. I think we would not be where we are today if that had not happened, but we're still here. And I am very concerned about the way that even this was shared with us as trustees, not to be able to have the opportunity to digest and absorb what the options were, because we were not privy to having that information for those that went to the mountain. So I just want to ask the question, what is the price of trust? What is the price of transparency in a community? And I can only use this card until probably December as a new trustee, I'm very concerned about the messaging that we've tried to convey to earn the trust back from the community. And schools are the hub of communities. Life happens in schools. So I will say to you that I see two options here. Option one, I would like to make a motion for solution one to repair the existing Earl B. Lundy Elementary School.
Thank you for that, Trustee Sparsa-Stroffigan. And for your piece, I just want to clarify that members received thorough communication by the superintendent during biweekly meetings, and these solutions were shared, not for us. They're not recommendations, they are just potential solutions, which is what the trustees requested at the last meeting. And they were reviewed and discussed at everyone's biweekly. It is my hope that everyone attended so that they had this knowledge and insight. Trustee Williams and Trustee Sparsa-Stroffigan, I hear your motion. I'm going to go around and request based on who's in the queue, see if there's someone else who would like to second. And it looks like I'm going to go ahead and just go down the queue. Trustee Williams?
Well, I'm not going to second that. I had a couple questions, but.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, did I miss the timeline? Why is, I guess the cheaper option, the lower cost option, later? It says spring of 2026, whereas like a full repair would be fall of 2025. Did I just miss something? I'm not.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Williams, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Certainly, building on to an addition has different parameters than making repairs to an existing building. So we would have to go through land use and entitlements. We'd have to go through NDEP permitting for the septic system. So it does have a longer pipeline than just repairing an existing building.
Okay. And then I guess I know you guys have already worked with like the Department of Libraries or Clark County Library District. Like, what's their, like, obviously they're agreeable to this. I mean, did they seem like wanting to work into this long-term contract with CCSD? My only fear with that is that like 10 years down the road, Clark County Libraries are like, we don't want CCSD here anymore. Like, I guess how do you guys plan on working on that?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Williams, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. We have had initial discussions with the Executive Director of the Library District, and they did share an enthusiasm about it. It very much fits into their strategic long-term goals for schools and libraries. So I can't speak on their behalf of their total thoughts about it, but that's the initial ones they shared with us.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured it would be too. I wasn't gonna second that motion. I was gonna make my own because I was gonna go for option 2, but those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if we've got we'll keep going down the list and see if there is a second. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to second the motion, but I do have questions. Thank you, Trustee Williams, because you hit a few questions that I had. But to clarify, yes, the executive director of the library district is in agreement, sounds excited, but at the end of the day, it's the board that will have to vote for it to be approved, correct?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Zamora, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Through discussions with the Executive Director, I can't speak to the extent of authority the Executive Director has with his board, but it's something they would have to explore who has the authority within their organization.
So, follow-up question, what happens if with their board, they don't agree, the executive director doesn't have the power, so what happens next if the option 2 is, the option that we go with after this meeting? So does that extend more and it comes back to the board? Like, what happens when the library is like, actually, we don't want this partnership?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Zamora, it certainly could, but I don't have any indication either way what the board of their organization would desire. Just our discussions have been with the executive director, who indicated it's in strategic alignment. So yeah, it has the potential, but we don't know what their board's appetite is for it without their board meeting, which is scheduled for September 12th next.
Thank you. And the last thing I have is just a comment. Like I've mentioned before, I think we've missed a lot of opportunities to, with the community, and I hope it's a lesson learned to everyone. But I don't like the idea of also extending this planning of what we're going to do next and what we're going to do next. It's a big risk, I think, going the library option. So I'm going to stand on my second motion. Thank you. Trustee Estrafagit. I'm tired.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Just to colleagues who made the motion and second, I'm going to continue down the queue to ensure that we hear from everyone first before we call the vote. Okay, thank you. Trustee Satori?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. And yeah, it was wonderful to be up on the mountain and be able to hear from the community. So it was really great to, and that was a lot of what we had wanted really, was to be able to hear their feedback, discuss some of these possible options, be able to bring it back to the board. So, and they were very appreciative of us being there. So it was a great turnout. One question I had also was related to the timeline, because I was a little unclear on that as well. Because my understanding, and maybe I had it wrong in my brain the whole time, was that it was 2 to 3 years for the repair. So this is actually fall of next year, correct?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustees Satori, yes, I think in a conservative light, this is just a as early as until a design build contractor proposes on the scope, that scope of work. We really don't have any hard estimate. Just by general best practices and industry knowledge, we generally forecast it could happen as early as this date.
Okay, so the temporary solution would be shorter than potentially anticipated. I mean, so seeing that it is a shorter temporary option if we were able to get it up in that amount of time. So, and then one thing related to the library. So, and I did think as well, going up, I thought libraries, that seems like a good option. It's definitely lower cost, adding on the 2 buildings. But also after hearing the feedback and looking at it, seeing that the repair of Lundy is a better option because just thinking of a school environment long-term, I mean, it has the, better facilities, it has the kitchen facilities, it has an MP room. So putting those 2 classrooms, there still is not really a way for students, when it's cold and snowing and those sorts of things to be able to get outside. But, I mean, even if we put a playground, I know it just doesn't quite have the space. So I definitely could understand why the community said, we really want our school repaired versus doing this option, and they were fine with it short term. And then the church option, I was kind of a proponent at first of, well, let's move forward with that, get them in the library now, and then maybe down the line if we have to move them, not that we want to keep moving students over and over, but if it was going to take 2 to 3 years, I was like, let's explore that option along that way potentially. However, if it seems like it would be a shorter repair time, I think that remaining in that library would be a good option. But the families were very flexible of saying, like, we are fine with any of these options as on the mountain. I mean, really, that was the resounding communication of any of these are an option. A portable, a church, the other locations, any of those are a better option versus the bus. And really, to me, it comes down to, I like the public comment of that, we made the decision to build this school for this community. We have a responsibility to our community. It was an emergency situation that was really not, that was out of anyone's control. And then, I forgot what was going with that, but also just that, that there's also the safety concern. That's what I say, I know as well, it is a small number of students, but it also is putting a small number of students at risk having to, in the winter months, make that transfer, making that hike and all of those things. So that is why I definitely am in support of repairing Lundy and utilizing the library as the temporary option. It does seem like they would be able to come in very quickly. The families were understanding of it would obviously not be Monday, but it could be very quick that we could get, there's a teacher already up there that would be able to, provide instruction. It could be a pretty quick temporary solution for them. And thank you for the motion and seconding it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Trustee Satori. You saved me a lot of talking there. Thank you so much. I don't know if I missed this, but we didn't get a copy. And thank you for all your work on this and your extensive explanations of the timeline and everything. Did we get to see a copy of the $6.6 million bid? Was that included anywhere?
It was sent to us.
It was sent to us?
No.
Okay. My apologies for that. I missed that.
Forgive me, Trustee Cavazos. I want to say that we received an email. I have to, no, maybe? Okay.
Of the actual bid?
Of the estimate? I don't know what you mean by bid. Do you mean like the entire document? I believe we
The
received the
final
estimate.
cost estimate. And, I may have missed it, whatever, tried to get through all the material. I'm going to go on to my other questions. I did want to let the president know that I also would have been willing to second Trustee Esparza Stofferkin's motion if Trustee Zamora had not beat me to it, but I would have. I want to make sure that the public listening, I got a question that I was a little confused about my constituent, tried to kind of clarify it, and I wanted to check in with our interim superintendent, make sure that I gave the right answer. And the district is not asking us tonight as before. They are not recommending that we close the school. Is that correct, Dr. Larson Mitchell?
Madam President, members of the board, for the record, Brenda Larson Mitchell, no, at this time we are not recommending that we close Lundy. We were tasked with bringing forward solutions. These are the two solutions that were shared with trustees during their biweeklies. These were the two solutions that were shared with Mount Charleston. We listened, we learned. They did not want the addition to the library as a permanent solution. They were open to it as a temporary solution. And it was very loud and clear from the community that they want us to repair. They want their children up on the mountain as soon as possible. Staff is willing to work and look at a temporary solution, but this diagram represents what was shared in the biweeklies with trustees. This document represents what was shared with the community at the community meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Larson-Mitchell. That was very explicitly detailed, and I appreciate it, and going into the details. I would have to say that I also, I'm a little bit puzzled that that third column was not included for the sake of the public as far as the insurance information. I just think that there has been, as some of my colleagues have stated tonight, it's just that I think that there were some balls dropped along the way, probably unintentionally. I know that there was communication on a regular basis. I do know that from staff. It's just that there has not been, in my estimation, clear and consistent, very clear and consistent communication to the community until I think the communication on May 10th. I do know that staff was sending out messages. In talking to members of the Mount Charleston community, I was told that the messages basically just said that the school remained closed, was unsafe, and that there was a timeline for that. If we went with the temporary solution of the library, I just, I'm kind of wondering would there be any PE space, physical education space, any, a multi-purpose room or whatever. It seems to me that our best bet would be something like looking into possibly the church and, as a temporary solution while the school is being repaired. And it says here on here, I believe, that the use of Mount Charleston Baptist Church may be more difficult due to insurance, risk management, or other legal concerns. And I do appreciate the word may, because that sounds like maybe that is still a possibility that it could be looked into. So at this time, I would have to say that I would have to go with agreeing with the motion as far as
Thank you, Trustee
repairing.
Cavazos.
Thank you.
Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. A couple of questions. One, can you remind us how the insurance claims were processed and how that process took place?
Mr. Gowdy?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Larson Mitchell, Jason Gowdy for the record. So insurance was processed during the recovery period after the disaster. They performed an assessment, and essentially we were awarded $1.5 million net of a $500,000 deductible at that time. That is, as is done. If we move forward with any additional construction, then we may be entitled to some additional compensation through insurance. However, of the original $5.5 or $5.3 million estimate that was performed, of that, 4.5 was a large chunk of it, and of that 4.5, the insurance company had noted that 3.5 of that would fall outside of the insurance coverage because it wasn't part of the original necessary requirements.
Okay, so there's not a third option where insurance will cover the cost of the building of the school?
No, there is not.
Thank you. And then can you, are we planning to build a school in Sky Canyon? And if so, what is the timeline on that?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Brooks, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. It is currently in approval process with the Bond Oversight Committee being brought to the board, but it's currently slated for fall of 2028 is the earliest it would open.
Okay. And then can you remind me of, I know we have a lot of the students that are in Lundy are in third grade, so by the time one of these options comes to fruition, how many students will be attending Lundy that are currently enrolled?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Lindsay Tomlinson for the record. Trustee Brooks, it would roughly be, if we went off of the fall 2025, we would be exiting at least another 2 students. So at this time, we would currently have 10 students enrolled up there, so we'd be down to 8. And then if it's over the next 2 years, we would be down to 5 at this time, without upcoming pre-K and kinder that we aren't aware of. I don't have those names at this time, so I can't tell you how many we actually have coming forward, but that's what we'd be in the next couple of years.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody from legal can answer this. Are you allowed to build a public school using public monies or like renovate a church? Are you allowed to have a public school on a church property?
Dr. Larson Mitchell, we're going to turn it over to you and then your team.
Madam President, members of the board, Mr. John Okazaki, our general counsel.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, John Okazaki for the record, general counsel. Our preliminary research into this question is no. There have been cases where limited use of churches for specific purposes on occasion have been approved by lower courts. There was one court that dealt with using a church auditorium for graduation. The court deemed it a violation of the Establishment Clause, and the Supreme Court said they weren't going to take it, which indicated that the Supreme Court was agreeing with that decision. Now, I will tell you that the Supreme Court has been completely reconstituted since that decision, and it's a possibility based on the dissent that they may flip on that question. However, it's pretty clear that in any case that they dealt with, they have they are consistent in that any use of a church has to be done in a way that there's complete separation. So not only separate entrances, but no intermingling. They cannot go onto any church, any part of the church that's still used for religious purposes. There cannot be any interaction between church personnel and students, not even saying hello in the morning. It really has to be separated. And so if we are going to explore that as a temporary solution, I would probably go out to the church to see the actual layout and the plan on how we would use it. But based on what I understand, I think it's going to be very difficult to make those separations. The last thing I will tell you is that we have already been sued twice by Freedom from Religion Foundation, and so I'm 100% confident that if we do this, even if we have a decent chance of prevailing, they will.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. My last question is, you've already placed the families of students or the students in other schools. Do you have an indication that those students would prefer to go to school in the church or the library versus going to a school that is comprehensive in nature?
Dr. Larson Mitchell.
Madam President, members of the board, at this time, we have not asked those parents if they would be interested in that. There were some parents, I believe, at the community meeting who expressed that interest. And I do want to say that Joe Caruso gave me a document, I believe, from Chris G. regarding the pre-K students right before the board meeting. So there are, it looks like 5 future pre-K students who currently are 2 to 3 years old, and then there are 8 who are currently 4 years old.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions. I am not in support of building the school because I do recognize that we still have hundreds of millions of dollars that we are behind in other schools. and we do have a fiscal responsibility. My heart goes out to the people who live on Lundy, but I think the district has made their best effort to find a workable solution, which is what they were tasked to do. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. I see we have Trustee Guzman and Trustee Cavazos in the queue. I've not had a chance to go. May I thank you? And then I'll turn it over to you, to Trustee Guzman and Trustee Cavazos, and then I'll call the vote, colleagues, okay? All right. When it comes to the students who are currently on, I want to clarify, Ms. Tomlinson, that the students who are currently reside in Mount Charleston are prepared to start school on August 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, President Garcia Morales, for the record, Lindsay Tomlinson, Region 1 Superintendent. Yes, all of the students that are living up at Mount Charleston in that neighborhood have been provided an opportunity and are placed at a school and are ready to begin on Monday morning.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate the intention and the efforts that has been put into redirecting and supporting the board to gain additional knowledge. Thank you, Dr. Larson Mitchell, for guiding this work as well. And I respect that this feels like a little bit of a pain point for our community and for our board and certainly for staff. I acknowledge that, like, if any balls were dropped, like, we have to be ready and willing to accept them ourselves as the board and not look to staff as scapegoats for said balls of drop. We have really tons of opportunities here to address future closings, which will take place in our community due to the the enrollment that's the lower enrollment in our district. And I am keeping that very much at the forefront of my mind, knowing that we will be having to face some really hard decisions across the entire district that may impact students. And given that we have an abundance of construction projects already in the queue, and we all receive those emails that say the alerts on a daily basis that say that AC is out in a specific school, or something went wrong with toilets. There's like tons of maintenance issues that exist in our current schools, and I am completely committed to ensuring that we do what's best for our students at Mount Charleston who live in Mount Charleston while they continue to receive a quality education that's has a ton of options for them, and at the same time make sure that we are responsible with our resources. So I am unable to support this motion, and I would like to turn it over to Trustee Guzman and then Trustee Cavazos so that we can call the vote.
Thank you. I am concerned because going up on the mountain, I was able to speak to the members of the community. And this school is really important to them. I know every school is important, but this school is really important to that community. And that community, we needed to do this right. And I even said that to Dr. Larson Mitchell. And I just want everyone to understand that this process started before we had an interim superintendent. Because I know that people are blaming Dr. Larson Mitchell for the process, but Dr. Larson Mitchell is the one that is getting us out there to talk to the community. And so I want to make sure that everyone understands that. Because through her leadership and the discussions, we wanted to do this right. And that is why we had the discussion on the different solutions and that they are in front of you. I am curious by not voting for the current the current motion that's on the floor, does that make it, Dr. Larson Mitchell, does that make it that we will do the other option? I am just curious because we took off the table the fact that we were closing Lundy. We took that off the table, so that's not even an option. So by not repairing the existing school, does that mean that Solution 2 comes into effect?
I believe that we need to submit a motion.
I agree, but I want to ensure that that is, because what's not on the table is the closure. So that's why I was asking Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell.
Thank you. Dr. Larson Mitchell?
Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Guzman, you are correct that the recommendation to close is no longer on the table. And I would refer to legal counsel regarding the agenda item. The agenda item states that we need direction. We need to know next steps for Lundy Elementary School.
Okay, thank you very much.
But I would refer to Ms. Malich if I'm...
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. It sounds like counsel, you agree. Can you please help us state that into the record?
Yes, I'm in support of what Dr. Larson Mitchell said.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, that's it for now. We're going to go ahead and take the motion. Is there any other additions?
Linda was going to speak.
Can we? Okay. Okay. Colleagues, my commitment to you is that we hear from you and then go into the vote, please. Okay. Trustee Cavazos?
I have no further questions or comments, Madam President. Thank you.
Trustee, no, you're good. I'm sorry, that was very visual. Sorry, you all. Trustee Satori?
My apologies. I have one further question because I want to make sure it's clear that on option 2, though, in looking in the cost difference between the two, there's also the cost then of of doing something to Lundy. So looking at the difference, like I think option 2 is actually costs more than it might be being perceived. So is it possible to say like an approximation then between 1 and 2, what cost difference we're looking at there? Taking all of that into account.
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Brandon McLaughlin, or Trustee Satori, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. I'm not a demolition contractor, and I don't know if I would have a good enough sense. It's likely in the millions.
But at some point, I felt like there was a possible, and I understand it was an estimate, but there was an approximation of what that would cost. Was it just 500? Okay, so it was, but it was, you think it would be millions to demolish it? Because my point is, if we're to do the addition, we're paying the money for the addition, we're also paying to demolish, that all could be just put into, and plus seeking any additional insurance money, but that instead could be put into the repair versus a solution that is not ideal. So like just kind of thinking like where we're putting our money and what is the actual, like how much more are we really spending to do option, or how much would option 1 even be, or option 2, sorry, how much would the library addition actually be saving us versus just repairing?
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Satori, Brandon McLaughlin for the record, I don't think it would, the differential between 6.8 and 1.4, I don't think the demolition costs would get you close to that. So yes, it would be somewhere between, but I don't think it would eclipse the 6.8.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Straffagan and Trustee Zamora. I believe that's right, correct? Yes. To adopt the option to repair the existing Earl B. Lundy Elementary School. Okay. Please cast your vote. Okay, colleagues, that motion does not pass with 3 yeas and 4 noes. At this time, I'm looking for another option, another motion. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion So I'm sorry, I can do it. To adopt option 2 to build the library addition.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll second.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Dr. Larson Mitchell, I see that you came on. Allow me 1 second. Colleagues, we're going to stop the vote here so I can turn on the mic.
Madam President, members of the board, for the record, Brenda Larson Mitchell, I just want to refer the board that is an exploring the addition to the library, right? I mean, that has not been solidified with the library, so we would be exploring that potential addition to the library. Because there would still be a lot of work that we would need to do with that partner.
Thank you, Dr. Larson Mitchell, for that clarity. Do you also need clarity around the bridging documents or the design build, excuse me? Oh, forgive me. Here we go.
Madam President, members of the board, Brenda Larson Mitchell, for the record, yes, please.
So, Trustee Williams, do you want to consider that, take that into account with your
Yes.
motion?
So, thank you, Dr. Larson Mitchell, for saying that. Because I recognize that we still don't even have an MOA with the library district or anything like that. So I guess I should have expanded on that. So I guess I'll revise my motion to have the board direct the superintendent to, I guess, go into the exploratory mode of looking at this additional piece to the library, including working with the library district and bridging documents. Is that a good enough motion? Is that clear enough, or do you want me to add anything else to that?
Maybe specifically request a design build process.
Yeah.
Request a design build
Yeah,
process.
so request a design build process with the exploratory library option.
Great, thank you. Trustee Brooks?
I still second.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, we have a motion on the floor by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 4-3. Okay. Thank you. I hope that gives you direction to look into the next steps and exploring what's coming up, which I'm sure there will be another update at some point. Thank you, everyone, for your time. All right, colleagues, we're going to move on to public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. Before I open item 3.01, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. Otherwise, we'll begin with individuals who signed up in advance.
Ernest Ferjaro, Chairman, Mount Charleston Town Advisory Board, Mount Charleston lover. I want to thank Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell. I don't have the chip in my head that all of these people have. Lisa, thank you for coming. Lisa, thank you for coming. You guys are trying to do it right, but you're being led down the garden path. $5.6 million into your whole budget is small potatoes. I know I got the time. I'll be off for it. No. I want to thank you for your vote, primarily to not close it. We got a long way to go before we figure it out. These people show up and blow smoke up. They do. They don't bring us the numbers. They don't bring you the numbers. Lisa, your question was legit. He's incapable of answering it.
Excuse me, Paul, please do not speak poorly about our staff. They work incredibly hard, and we are not going to take anyone speaking poorly
Okay,
about.
boss, I'll cool it. I'll
Thank
cool
you.
it.
Take it.
That being said, I was a consultant for the district for 25 years. I know your staff is good. I worked with modernization and rehab and new construction. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I like y'all. You got a tough job. But I'm intimidated by 12 women and just me. I'm shaking up here. That being said, that served no purpose other than to satisfy me. I want to work with you people. We want the building. we can work with it and do it for a community center. We used to play basketball, used to play badminton. It's a good facility. No, I know 5.6 million may scare you, but we don't even know what the number is for the school in the library. It won't be as good of a facility, but we're willing to work with you. So I'm here, just tell you. I know everybody on that mountain. We're willing to work with you. The state wants to work with us. The county wants to work with us. We want to work with you. So just help us work with you.
Chris Giuliani, come on up, please.
Thank you, Christian Kiliani. Again, thank you to everybody. And I should not have used the term blindsided. You were very clear about this board makes the decision. So I overinterpreted. So please accept my apology on that part of it. That said, we have not gotten anything in writing. We've been hearing numbers for 2 months now. If your own insurance company hired a secondary engineer to question the original #1 engineer of the United States, and they said the facility is safe, but internally your people decided they didn't want to reopen it, then how do we counteract that? We're trying to save you money. We didn't ask for a rebuild. We asked you just to use your insurance money to repair what they said, and then go back and ask for more if it didn't cover what you needed. You've done the majority of the work. It was completed in October. But Trustee Bustamante Adams, you had mentioned at the last meeting, you don't want to spend $6 million or whatever it might be. Where was that number? What was it tied to? If it's not in writing, it does not exist. So you put us at risk of not looking cooperative. We want to work with you, but we want our school reopened. And tonight did not solve that. If you hate me, that's fine. This isn't about me. I don't have children, but I've been on the mountain for 42 years. Our community cares. And I think the 2 trustees saw that. They were physically very verbal, but they're a great group. And it's a community in and of itself. If you repair it, then I can go to the county and say, help us put a community center in. But if it's not repaired, they're not playing with us. And so that's part of the problem. You took Lundy off. Lundy, if there are issues internally that we didn't know about, because your report, if you read it, says a lot of it was pre-existing conditions, then you did not maintain that facility, and it should have been on the revised CIP probably 3 or 4. It's a school over 40 years. I wrote that law. You should have had Lundy being modernized and rebuilt years ago. That's all I was asking, and we were asking for, is put it back on your CIP list. So it's in that mix. You could do a program there. You could make it K-12. You could put a forestry program in. You could have a true career path. You could do flora and fauna and train firefighters for emergency response. That school could become a true gem. And then you've got a pipeline of students that are going through it. But none of that was the discussion. It's been about money, but the money's not been truthful. The assessment that you never even got as trustees until I asked for a FOIA, you didn't even know existed. They paid the bill for the $120,000 and the $125,000 for Martin and Harris. And then they took it out of the deductible, and then they took it out again out of the insurance money. So Lundy got penalized twice.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Ed Gonzalez, please. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Madam President, Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ed Gonzalez. I first want to speak on an item that is on tomorrow's agenda. I won't be there. I'll be at an open house at Hickey. You have an item to revise one of your regulations.
I'm sorry, I turned off your mic, Ed, not on purpose. Please turn it back on. But while I'm here, I do want to thank you for, that was me, it was all me. I want to thank you for providing that feedback. I turned it over really quickly to Dr. Larson Mitchell, and there'll be additional changes to that possibly.
That's what I wanted to thank. That's what I did wanted to thank. I did send it to, and just let the board know, because I only sent it to you, Madam President, and to Dr. Brenda Larson Mitchell, and then Ms. Cole Paul as well. I did get immediate feedback from them. Just the issue was with the principals having a vote, under the law, 50% have to be parents. It requires now an additional parent on the board, and so that wasn't included in there. And I'm glad that came to that because I wouldn't want to have a third reading and a fourth reading on a board, on a regulation, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I want to start with that. And then number two, I came a little late, so I couldn't have an opportunity to speak on the superintendent search. Just the focus groups. I know I have been honored to be participated in at least one of those, and so I know you don't take RSVPs, but I count this as my RSVP for the date of September 5th. But not only that too, I think a lot of them can be done online. I do agree with Trustee Brooks, where we went the last time and there are very tiny crowds when we got into the third, the fourth, the fifth one. I think ours could be done online. I know it's 30 minutes, or 30 people that I had in the group that I counted for an hour. This public comment will be longer than the time I expect, but that can easily be done online. I do think the special interest groups can be done the same way, but I do have some concerns that one, you got way too many, and I'm not going to list people who should be taken off, but there's some even internally that, we want to get feedback and we know that feedback is important, but we're really saying some groups are more important than others. I know we don't say it that way, but that's really what it is. But let me give you an idea. You got the Sex Education Committee. That's on their special interest groups. You have other committees, Bond Oversight, AZAC, the other ones that you have. Why are they not included into it? You have individual members onto it, but they should be included, and that can be done online. You have another one. You have the City of North Las Vegas Education Advisory Committee, and that's great for them to be on there. But has Henderson CF been included? Has Moapa CF been included? Has Virgin Valley's been included? So those are other stuff that we're looking at it as well, which is making sure it's broad-based when we have a category that people can do it. And like, again, that could easily be done online. I do have a concern when we do regions. Regions are really large. They're like congressional districts, and some of them don't line up well. We have parts of Summerlin tied into the east side. So we want to make sure that we have the opportunity. Those easily can be done in person. But I do have one of a concern. And it's a particular group because I don't know if the board is aware that they're inviting something like this. You have one group on your special interest, which is actually a special interest. To go with Trustee Book's definition is, it's a political action committee. And that's troublesome, not in the aspect that the people are in it, but if you have one political or two, it doesn't matter what the purpose of the organization is, but a political action committee is designed to elect and to oppose candidates. And I asked this body, do you want that process to come into a superintendent search? That's the concern I have. I do not care what their political aspirations are. That's not the question. If you have a political action committee in a superintendent search, this body should say, is that what we want or not? Thank you.
All right, colleagues, thank you very much. That concludes public comment. We're going to move on to upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees on Thursday, tomorrow, August 8th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Guzman.
I second.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. We have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. The time is 7:32. Have a great night.